we'll have a listen on our lines. We've got Talkie open. I think someone came up briefly. If you want to call in on us, go to the Talkie app and type in X-Bands, X-B-A-N-D-S, in the field, and you'll be able to talk to us on the line. I think. Is there someone there at the moment? Just I'll put up the line. The main pute is this one here, isn't it? So, hello, anyone on Talkie? Apparently not at this present time. It's a null screen. Okay, we're listening on 145 megahertz, 145.3. And also on 437.8, I think. I think 437.8 is what we're listening on. Anyone? 437.8. 437.8. Always get that mixed up. 437.8. So I'll just write that down so I don't forget it again. 437.8. Okay, well, there seems to be no one there. I might have to come back a little bit later on, and maybe at midnight, but we'll see if anyone's there. For the moment, we could have a listen on 80 metres, and see if anyone... Oh, I think someone's on. Noel's on, so that's good. We say a very good evening to Noel. Hope you're receiving us okay. Yeah. And we have we have Dr. Newbeck on as well. So we've got everyone on the line.
Hello.
Oh, hello there. How are you?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm just getting a bit of echo because I'm streaming off the phone.
Okay,
I'm
well,
hearing
I'm
myself. Okay, that's all closed down, so I'm back. Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, now I'll just have to... now, why are you coming up? I have to turn that up there because I'm going to get a mix set up. Have to set up the mix minus. The mix minus, there we are, so you should be able to hear me now.
I can hear you. There was a bit of digital garbling there, so I don't know what's going on. Maybe my connection's bad.
Well, yeah, I just tested on the iPhone before. You might have heard, and it seemed to be working okay. So it's okay leaving here, I think. Yeah, now Noel's on the line. If you want to talk, that's fine. He's probably just listening on the line. And we're listening on 145 megahertz and also 145.3 and 437.8. But no one seems to be coming on those lines at the moment. So, yeah.
No.
So just hang on, I'll check a few. I'll just set things up here. Put the recording device on and make sure it's all taped for posterity to be replayed in 1,000 years when this is all going to be a big thing. People are going to get their idea of what culture in the 2000 was like by listening to this bilge pump. So yeah. So back to you there, Mr. Beck.
Yes. So what's new with me? Well, I just got back home not long ago.
Yes.
Tested out a couple of the radios that you gave me the other night.
Oh yes, how are they going?
Because they're going quite well. I've discovered I was testing them at Rowville, the Rowville QTH,
Yes.
and as the very sensitive one, it did manage to slope detect your FM quite well. The problem is down in Rowville, the noise level is incredibly high.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's... I mean, there were a few patches where I could get sort of full clarity. But, yes, unfortunately out that way, it's not very good. I do have the receivers sitting on the couch here, so I'll just fire them up.
Okay.
And...
See what you make of it.
Getting a bit of... I don't know if you can hear any of that. There we go.
A bit of something.
You can hear a bit of a static.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just switch the transmitter to AM for a few minutes and see if it makes any difference to you.
Oh, that'd be very good.
Just stand by.
Let's give that a go.
I'll just do the work. Hang on.
Okay, it sounds like the Stu's patching things around. I have to say I did tune in on 3670 earlier tonight on the same receivers, and that came through fairly well, which is all very good. This, by the way, is just a little radio that Stu gave me. It's a Sanyo.
That's on 1868 AM. So
1860.
Yeah, so
I can hear a bit of a
comes through on the line. I don't hear anything through my FM receiver, obviously, because it's on AM and it's blanking it out. But that you might be able to hear my talking here. So that'd be okay. Good. If you're trying to listen inside, it's probably a dead loss in that area, I should think.
Yeah, well, it's coming through quite well now.
Okay.
Well, it was a second ago, and then I just suddenly had the noise floor jump up for some reason.
Really?
So.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, I'll go and I'll stick it back on FM, so just stand by. And
standing by.
Yes. So, there we go.
Having some patching down at the transmitter hall, I think. And moving from AM to FM, which I don't know how many commercial stations can do that on the fly. Switch from AM to FM and back again. It's quite a nifty thing having your own transmitter hall. You can do things like that.
Right. Now, on my test drives, I've stopped at that in the big shopping centre.
Yes.
And in the car park there, I'm on various receivers, including I think the two you've got there, no problem receiving AM or FM at all there. So it's just obviously it seems to be you need to get out of the noise field a bit.
Yeah, I suspect it's got something to do with the massive switch yard that's only about 2 or 3 kilometres from me.
Yeah, I don't know. The noise and that, unless you're under the power lines, doesn't go very far.
Yeah.
I mean, I know driving there, when you go under those big lines, there's a lot of noise, but then it sort of it disappears fairly quickly after that. So how's the lupus working that you got from Mr. Dallas?
Now, I tried that as well to compare, and as I said, the original the 160 metre AM receivers that he gave me can't get up to 1868. It only goes up to 1860.
You have to get a screwdriver and fix it.
Yes, I haven't gotten around to trying to tweak it a bit more, not to mention the loop is actually peaked on about 1843. So I haven't gotten around to mucking around with that. But I did try it with the Drew Diamond receiver with the preamp from Dallas's receivers, and it worked. I couldn't fortunately, which is a bit weird because I have managed to do it before. I don't know whether it's just in the wrong part of the room or the loop antenna is just too sharply tuned. So
how does 80 come in on that receivers?
The Drew one.
The one I gave you, the one that's got 80.
Meters,
yeah.
Oh, that came through fantastically.
Yeah.
In fact, I can try and... That's the one that I'm holding now.
Right, okay.
I might try tuning into 80.
Righto.
It's coming in
see what that sounds like. Yeah. Now, I've forgotten what receivers I gave you. I gave that realistic one. And
the little Sanyo one.
Oh, the Sanyo one. Yes, that's right. Yes, that's that little one there. Oh, it's quite interesting receivers, yeah. So that's all to the feel good. Yeah.
No, I remember, I think you said one was good at slope detecting and the other one was particularly suited for, well, it was just very sensitive.
Yeah, I think the realistic one's super sensitive. So yeah, if you're out in a noise quietening area, you can hear anything that you'd probably hear with a big antenna. Amazingly sensitive set. Yeah. Yes, so what further? Oh, yes, well, we won't be hearing from Mr. Steve tonight. He's away.
Oh, yes.
He could very well be listening. So he might even send us an email or something. I don't know if he's in range of wireless range. And, so all to the good. I don't know if Frank's going to come up or not. We've got the Frank listening line on 145 megahertz. I can't see anyone there. And 145.3. So, it might be a quiet night.
Sounds very quiet. I think it's just me and you and Noel.
Yes, that's right. Of course, we could, anyone who wants to come on via Talkie, if you've never used Talkie before, just type in Talkie into Google and you get talkie.io. It's an easy app. You don't have to download anything. You just go to their website or page. It comes up on a thing. And you type in, there's a little thing there to type in a name, and you type in Xbands, Xbands, and you'll connect straight to us. Of course, basically anyone who types the same word in that thing gets connected, which is pretty amazing sort of way of doing it, isn't it?
Very well.
It means there's
most of the time.
There's 20 billion connections that can be made. So, yeah. I wonder how it would work in Japanese. You'd have to type in Japanese characters or something.
I think that you dropped.
Yeah. Put in some kanji characters. Yeah, so anyway. So if anyone wants to go on. I think it sounds like you've got bad internet at your place there.
Yeah, I think that we're winning on NBN here, so I think it might drop out from time to time.
Yeah, you're sounding a bit strange there.
Which is not good.
No. Well, we could see if someone might come up on 80. I'll dial in the SDR. And we've still got Talkie up there. That's right. Yes, good. I guess I can use the same pute, so I don't need to go... no, I'll use the other one. And we'll sort this out. HDMI 2. Put over there. And we'll see if anyone's on 80. And they could probably come through. We'll do a little thing over here. Pause that for the moment. And yes, Matic. So and what I need is yes, sdr.hu. Put that there. And yes, should see it come through. I suppose I'll listen from Mr. Loops and see what's happening. I could listen from... I'll listen from Mr. Loops, or maybe...
Do you have any local receivers for 80 metres that are patched in and ready to go, or are they too fiddly?
Well, since I'm transmitting 100 watts of 80 metres...
Oh, well, yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, that's... I'd forgotten about that little detail. Yeah,
I have done it in the past. You can sort of do it. It's very, very time consuming. You have to have filters and things. It's not, and you really can't. You have to be down the other end of the band. You can't do it close to the same thing. So I used to do it talking to Mr. Bundanoon. I used to do that, but I put another receivers out in the backyard and had a directive antenna and all that sort of thing. 3670, bang, there we are. And we'll have a listen from, see what it's sounding like from up there. That's from the old computes there. Radio. So what we'll do, we'll have a listen on 80. Now, we'll listen on 36. I'll just, 36, maybe 360. 36. Yeah, 3.60. So we'll listen on 3.60, which is coming through now. We could listen, of course, on the beacon, on the Morse beacon on 3670. We'll have a listen how that's coming through. Actually, what we might do is listen on 3665 because it's a bit closer to us, and 3665. So if you want to come on 3665, we can listen to you and really lay you back on 3670. So that might be the way to do it. I think that's 3670 there, 3650. That's right. So we're listening on 3650 AM SSB, whatever. You want to come on? I don't think anyone will, because 80 metres seems to be totally Well, it's not dead. There just seems to be my signal. I can't see any. There's funny sort of probably whisper things and little things, but there's no. I can't see any voice transmissions on it at the moment. Just us filling up the band. So how it's all very good. Oh, wind that down there. Yeah. Oh well, it's much more convenient when everyone's in the same area, aren't they? Just talking on a microphone.
Yeah, that's right. Can have a panel discussion.
Yeah, I think Frank's up now.
Ah, yes.
Hello, Mr. Frank.
Mr. David, good evening, and Mr. Andrew, how are you?
Oh, very good, thank you. Now, just turn you off a bit.
I've just come on to say I'm not coming on.
Oh, well, thanks for letting us know anyhow.
Yes,
I'm not getting Frank in my feed.
Yeah, you're not patched in. Yeah, go on.
Oh, right.
I had a big day with the grandkids. We went to see Charlie in the chocolate factory.
Oh, yes.
Very good, and lots of loud music. And I'm a bit whacked, so I think I will listen.
Okay.
So
Well,
don't talk about it, because I'll be there.
That's right. Okay. So we might see. Is it this week the big thing?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, might see you then.
Oh, certainly will.
Yeah.
Certainly will. So take care.
Okay.
And have a good mission.
Okay. See you later, Frank. Bye.
Okay, Dave. Cheers. Cheers, Andrew.
Bye, Frank. See ya.
Okay, well, look, if anyone else wants to come on that line, 145 or 145.3 or 437.8 megahertz, you can do that. But I don't think it's going to be a very big night of missions for some reason. But yes, I think having it talking from the green room seems to be the way to do stuff, really, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly adds another dimension to the whole proceedings.
That's right.
Quite a setup last week. I rather enjoyed that.
Yes, it was. It seemed to.
The remote booth.
Yeah, that's right. I found another box full of neck mics, which I could have just stuck one on you rather than use that other one, but still, not to worry. I'm going through a major audit of all the stuff here. So hopefully we'll get finding out stuff I didn't even know I had, which is interesting. Well, doesn't
that's good. Sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Here you go.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I need to do exactly the same thing at my place. I was working on various projects today. It was an absolute nightmare just trying to get things out of the stuffed up workroom, which I'm trying to gauge the size of that room relative to your sort of missions building. I think it's about half the size, but it's probably got double the density of stuff, which is not a good situation to be in. I need to sort of rationalise it a bit.
Yeah, now look, I've found stuff I didn't even know I had. I've probably been buying other stuff because I didn't know I had this stuff. And it's like I've got boxes of components, like it's all good to have extra resistors and transistors and capacitors and electrodes and this sort of stuff, but you don't need boxes and boxes of them. You just need a few trays with a variety of values and everything. And I've got all this tons of stuff, and then you find other things you've got. So yeah, it's interesting. So I'm going to do a big audit, and hopefully Mr. Anthony will come with his car, and we can he can sell some at a hamfest.
Cart it all the way.
Yes, that's right. You have to be ruthless, I think. You have to really think, well, what are the chances this stuff's going to be used? You certainly need spares and things for yourself, but you don't need, spares. You need, a few, but not unlimited amount of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. My big problem is trying to figure out how to dispose of things. I mean, the easiest thing to do would just be to book a skip and just put everything in the skip.
Yeah.
And then, but there's I've got some stuff there that I'm sure is kind of valuable, and that's where you start to get into trouble. For example, all of my old computers, if I flogged them off on eBay or Facebook or something, I could probably get at least $50 each for them, because they're sort of in demand for old 486s and Macintosh classics and things. So I just thought, oh well, one day I'll put them on eBay, but I never actually get around to doing it because It takes a bit of effort to type up a listing and then be around at a time when somebody wants to come and collect it. And yes.
If that was your only job to make money out of that, I suppose you could do it, but when you're working full-time anyhow, and to do a lot of work like that to maybe get $50 a week if you're lucky, it's not a very good hourly rate.
No, it's definitely not very good, and I know that firsthand because that's effectively what my dad did. About 15 years ago, he quit his main job as a software developer, and he went to sell microwave RF components on eBay. And he's been doing that ever since,
right.
But he manages to somehow live off his $50 a week. It's some tiny amount. But he's happy just sort of sitting away in the countryside selling little RF bits on eBay.
Where's he, without giving too much away, where's he source the stuff from?
Well, various... he bought a lot of bulk assemblies and things from a certain surplus place in Clayton.
Right.
And he got another lot of stuff from another surplus electronics place in Clayton, which is actually Rockby Electronics.
Oh, right, yes.
He bought massive amounts of stuff from Rockby, and then he started sort of packaging it up. I remember one of the jobs that I had one summer was, I think he bought maybe 200 or 300 reels of capacitors, fairly high-grade ones, and I had to catalogue all of them and sort them by tolerance and value, and it was a massive project just working in the backyard, and I don't think he's ever done anything with them. I mean, what could you possibly do with 300 reels of capacitors? Each one's about 2,000 caps. You're not going to sell them on eBay because people can just go down JCar and buy X number of caps.
Well, that's right. I just got your email. I see. I just...
yes, I was going to send you some visual...
Yeah, I've got the visuals there. Hang on. Yeah, well, see, this is how people going down a thing. Oh, well, yes, I see. Oh, that's very nice. Very photogenic. Blue sky, bit of water.
So that was what I was doing today. I'll describe for the listeners, well maybe for what I've just sent Dave, is this a drain, a stormwater drain. It's quite a photogenic one. It's one of the most photogenic in Melbourne, actually, and it has 2 stairways on either side. And yes, it was a magazine launch I went to earlier today. Hello?
Yeah, just keep talking.
Oh, yes. Well, it was... there's a magazine that a certain subterranean organisation has been putting out for the past 30 years. This little zine has just reached its 97th issue. It's called Il Draino, which is a play on Il Globo, the Italian magazine. And we got invited to go out to this little canal somewhere in the western suburbs of Melbourne, and it was supposed to be a barbecue, but the weather today was just so awful. We ended up not doing that. In fact, it was amazing that we even got the sky coming out. So, yes, it was an enjoyable afternoon. Just sat around, and drains make quite good barbecue spots, I find. If you can find somewhere that's adequately ventilated, you can set up like a camping stove and just fry up some sausages and bread, and it's quite an enlivening experience, just having some sausages and bread and maybe some sauce and some beer and Coca-Cola in a drain. Yes,
very, very healthy.
I'd recommend it.
Yeah, well, it's quite good. So, a few hours down there. No, well, it was an interesting sort of day weather-wise, wasn't it? You could have had a rainstorm and been washed away.
Yes. Well, we were worried that was going to happen, and I'm amazed it didn't. It was really weird because the flow into that tunnel wasn't particularly high during the rain. It only sort of picked up when the sun came out, and I imagine that's because all of the rain from far upstream had just come down.
Yep.
And that sort of stretch of water in the middle broadened out by about 30 centimetres on each side, so it did get a bit hairy. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's all fun. Yes, back to the components. Yes, well, look, if with components worth about a cent each, it's really, what are you going to do about them? Who's going to buy? Even though you've got a lot of people buying them, you're not going to make much profit.
Oh yeah, that's the thing with passive components.
Yes.
I mean, it's really a volume game.
Yeah. Yes, I was going to sort all mine out. And what's the point? It's going to take me hours. I'll just, it's just not worth it. And just, grab a handful. You've got a selection of them, I suppose, and of anyone who wants any capacitors, pots, or whatever, they can, any values, I can probably find them for them. Because pots are very expensive.
They are actually.
They are.
A few dollars a pop for these little, probably low-spec things.
Yeah, and I bought you might have been there, a whole box of wire-wound potentiometers, good quality ones.
Now, was that at the HRSA garage sale?
It was, yes, that's right.
Right, and that was in that nice wooden box?
No, just a cardboard box.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of something
Maybe
else.
there was a more in a wooden box, but there's certainly a lot of components floating around. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
Look, if I wanted a certain transistor, it's cheaper to go to some place and buy one than the hours it take me, and like to drive up to Clayton and back again is going to take less time than going through hundreds of transistors and trying to read the numbers on them.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's a problem.
Yes. No, I bought a box full of nice little bits and pieces from the last HRSA garage sale that there was, and
Right.
that will do me quite well when I get around to building the 160 metre transmitter. I think I've got most of the components now. It's just getting down to do that darn metal work.
I hate metal work. I'm building my next one out of wood, like they did in 1930. It was a much better idea.
Wooden meters.
Yep.
Did somebody else just come up on Talkie?
I think they did. I'll have to go and look at Talkie, and we've got two people. No, it's just Noel. He must have come out and come back on again,
Yeah, right.
I think. So that's what happened. What are we going to talk about? Oh, yes. What were we talking about?
Components.
Oh, yes, that's right. They've got so many components. And look, if you do need anything, I'm sure I've got particularly meter type components, high voltage stuff and big caps and stuff. If you need something, so the trouble is a lot of people just grab it and never build anything, and then they get another garage full of stuff. So it's all just sitting around.
Yeah.
And the people who really want to use it can't use it because it doesn't exist anymore. It's in people's collections, getting dust and being rusted on and everything like that.
Which reminds me, last week I think Steve mentioned certain items from a certain estate going up on auction.
They're going up on auction.
Big monies.
You wouldn't believe it. It's the prices are stupid, absolutely stupid. Like one of those little I've got a few. They go for about $5 at HRSA or less. The HMV little 1960 transistor radio thing with a round dial, very simple device in a leather box and all that. And I had about 10 of them. A couple were in mint condition. I kept them and I threw the rest in the rubbish bin.
Mm.
And one of those is on this site for $75.
No.
He's not going to get it. It's just ridiculous. And
No.
it's well, maybe you will, I don't know, but it's a long, drawn out process, as we were saying, and stupid things that they have up on there. I just don't. The price of that sort of stuff has just gone really downhill. All the collectors already got what they want, and they're tuttling off, and all the stuff's going for cheap. So I don't think it's. I mean, the amount of stuff in that place, they probably sold 5% of it at that big auction about a year ago.
Right.
The amount of stuff in that place, they'd have to sell like hundreds of items a day to get it out of the way in a couple of years. It's just absolutely incredible. I mean, going through every little bit is just, really weird thing. And when you think that... real estate is very expensive. If you've got rooms full of stuff and you can't get into it, and I don't know if they want to sell the house or whatever. It's probably worth a couple of $1 million for the sake of maybe a few $1,000s worth of parts. Just bulldoze it all out and sell the house. I mean, I've seen this happen many times. People end up going on bridging loans, paying thousands of dollars a week to keep a house so they can get rid of and try and eBay sell about $1,000 worth of stuff from it. It's just total false economy.
Yeah, that's right. It's not a good situation to be in.
I think people can't see the wood for the trees or something. They get greedy. They think, I've got all this stuff. It could be worth $50 on eBay, each one of these things. I'll do that. But that means it could be on eBay for weeks or months.
Well, yeah, that's right. And you've got to consider the cost of actually storing things and getting in the way of your life and all that. I mean, that's the problem that I'm dealing with now.
See, luckily I've had a few moves and I've got rid of a lot of stuff. Although there are still some original things I've had since I've been, started in the business. But it's been recycled a few times, which is good, because when you move somewhere, you tend to get rid of stuff. But I've got an awful lot of stuff. It just seems to build up again, but I'm getting rid of more. But yes, interesting thing, when I had to sort of sort out stuff at my mother's place that was being sold about 40 years ago or something, and my brothers came down and said, oh yeah, look, this, that, the other thing, yeah, put all this, it was before eBay, put all this on the trading post, and we'll sell this table and this chair, this TV set, this sort of stuff. And I said, oh look, you're joking. And I just got the guy from the local auction house. He came in and said, oh yeah, I'll buy the whole lot for $1,500. And he did. And look, I could have got 3 times as much if I had to put it on eBay or trading post, but then I would have had people ringing up at all hours, marching through the house, looking at all this stuff, deciding not to buy it. And he had all this stuff in his showroom for about a year, and was slowly sold over a year. So he had all the stuff in the shop window, and it still took a year to sell. And that's his business. But I would have had all that stuff, and we wouldn't be able to walk around the house because I had furniture everywhere, and I just wanted to get rid of it.
Yeah, once you consider the time input that it takes to actually deal with this stuff, it's the way that my dad explained it. He went through this process where he was down at Mac Service Group, like every week we'd go in after school, I got picked up from school, and we'd pick something up. It was some obscure test set from that was used by Telstra for a brief period in the 80s or something.
Yes.
And he's still got all of it in a massive shed up in the UK, and it's like there are more projects there than anyone would even be able to handle in a lifetime.
In the UK?
In the UK. Well, he moved all of his stuff to the UK.
You mean the UK on the other side of the world?
Yes.
He bought junk from Mac Service up the road here.
That's right.
And he shipped it to the UK.
He did. He spent big months
More
filling
than the
a
stuff was
40-foot shipping container and moved it halfway around the world, and it is now just sitting in a shed doing not much.
Now, this is interesting. Now, Mac Service was an amazing place before they went bad, wasn't it? It was just fantastic. I used to go there every week or so, and I'd have a look through Mac Service. It was fantastic. There was that big yard, and inside the shed, and that compactor with all the stuff, and it was just like fantastic. And it was really great. I really enjoyed it. I got some really good things from there. And then one day I went in, and they said, we don't sell to the public anymore. If you want to buy stuff, you have to buy it after it's been fixed up in a bubble pack for $1,000.
Yep, that's right. They only sell calibrated, ready-to-go equipment now for much more than... They don't cater to the hobbyists.
No. And I said, well, if that's the case...
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, Mr. Rigg here. What other frequency can I come up on?
145.3.
I was just there before. Go back there.
Okay, because it wasn't turned on, because I'm expecting everything turned on, ready to go, of course. So it should be on there now. Yeah, so anyway, Mac's service was...
Does that work?
Yeah, that's working.
Oh, I can hear myself. The FM's coming through quite nicely tonight.
Oh, it must be a stable night.
Yes, and the other missions last night were quite nice, the Stephen Langley missions.
Oh, yes.
I did a bit of a crossband with them after that later on.
Oh, really?
Yes,
I thought...
I remember, see, half the time I turned the computer on to do my internet after Netflix time is finished, which just happens to be the time he comes on, and I forget about it. I was meant to listen to Stephen Langley. I come on, it's just finishing.
Yep.
But last night I managed to, I left a handheld on to listen for a few people, for Anthony and that, and all of a sudden, because it's a dual band one, the Langley missions came out of it.
Well,
thought, oh yeah, that's right, so it reminded me.
Well, isn't that good? You heard Mr. Langley. I think he won't be on next week, but...
No, he said that. Unfortunately, all this stuff that he sets up on your tube and everybody else's tube but mine is in HTML5, and I can't decode that with the XP computer.
How do you mean?
Well, even with Google Chrome on it, it doesn't seem to want to play back HTML5 YouTube videos.
On an XP computer?
That's right.
Well, I'm looking at them on an XP computer here, one I bought in...
Well, I even downloaded all the things to make it work, as they said would make it work, and it still didn't work.
Well, I've got my main computer, my auxiliary computer, which I use all the time often, is I bought it in 2004 and it's XP. And it's
I'll have to see if I can find out why it's doing that, because it said it couldn't do it. I clicked on the thing and it said download a new Chrome, so I clicked the thing for that and it did all that and it still didn't work.
So what, is this to watch, you can't watch YouTube on it?
I can watch some YouTubes, but not the ones that are HTML5, which is unfortunately what all Stephen Langley's things are, but there's a lot of other things I can watch.
Yeah, that's interesting, and you can't watch any of mine?
I can watch quite a lot of yours because they're not HTML5.
Well, I don't know. What, Mr. Beck, what do you think about that?
Is this about YouTube on Windows XP? I can only barely hear John. He's sort of fading in and out on my mix.
Oh, hang on, Walter. I'll put him up more.
Yeah, because I was going to say, so how come your father's in England?
Just ask that question again there, John.
How come your father's in England?
It just came through and then it disappeared.
Well, I'm coming through perfectly on 160 metres. I can hear perfect side tone in my headphones. I'm loud and clear and hi-fi, so I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, well, you should be able to hear John okay. He's up here. He's coming up to the same level as I am.
I think I'm louder than... I'm as loud as you are. I can hear my voice coming back perfectly in full fi.
You are.
Yeah, so there's certainly no problem with that here.
Yeah.
Oh, his audio level is a bit more stable coming into my mix now. Are you using like a noise gate or something,
No,
Dave?
no.
Oh, okay.
No, not using anything here. In fact, I don't even have a limiter at the moment hooked in.
Oh, right.
In fact, I'm hoping to do that to make it louder.
I think that the question was YouTube on XP. Now, I know that YouTube, I think, I think it requires Flash to run.
It used
no,
to.
actually, I think it's now its own standalone thing. And if you don't have a more recent browser, it definitely won't run.
Well, I've got... I just updated the Google Chrome thing that runs an XP, and it still doesn't work.
Oh, that's weird.
Now, it's interesting. A few years back, I noticed that a lot of the more recent YouTube uploads I couldn't watch on my XP computer. And
that's because the newer ones are in HTML5.
Yeah. And then,
which I don't know what it all is, but it's a new standard. I mean, this is why we still need governments to have broadcast control boards and make terrifying regulations things have to adhere to for the next 30 years, just to make things compatible like we used to. But governments don't do that anymore, so now we have such a throwaway society because of it.
So, yeah, now getting back to the other thing, and then after a week or two it went back to normal. Now what happened, the YouTube gurus decided that everyone with old computers wouldn't be catered for anymore, and they made the change, and
Because the ratings would suffer.
and there was such an uproar, and so that they just did something, and ever since then I've had no problems at all.
No, yes, well, I'll have another play with the computer again and see what happens. But I went through all this last night because I was going to then see if I could get the audio off them by one means or another, either with the Zoom H2 or or else plug a roller in there and
Roller.
well, that sometimes some things where they don't let you download, I've got a reel-to-reel recorder next to the computer and I can do that.
I just patched audio straight from through the desk back if I want to record something. I don't bother trying to download it often.
Yeah, well, that's right. If I had the desk set up, if I could get some construction work done here, fine, that would be good.
Now I've got this computer here, and it's running a Windows. I have never updated this computer. I've turned the updates off when I got it in the early 2000s.
Well, if it's an XP one, there won't be any updates anyway.
Yeah,
so
but there was for the
first. In fact, I never had the updates on either, because if you're using a JIA version of XP or something, the updates could detect that and then make your Windows not work anymore because it was a legal limited copy.
Yeah, I've never had that happen. It just sends it.
Now, apparently they say that could happen, so that with those not so official copies, they say do not have automatic updates on, otherwise that will happen, so I've always followed that advice.
Look, I don't take updates, but I've had that an illegal copy, and a little thing comes up every now and then saying this is an illegal copy, you'll go to goal and get a penalty in the bargain, and that's, you just ignore that. And I've never had anything more serious happen. And these are, ones I found in the tip, so, I wasn't the one who put the illegal copy in. I'm surprised at that, because I can look at YouTube of all the things is usually pretty backward compatible to the most ancient equipment. I know whenever I get old, ancient computer from the street, an old XP, XP version, really early version, that it still seems to run YouTube okay. It doesn't run it in full res, of course, but they still seem to work. Because I think they put out a lot of different streams and, different resolutions and a whole lot. So, if you've got the latest thing, you'll get the highest resolution and the best quality. But I think they've got, downward compatible sort of stuff. That's been my experience anyhow. If I look at a YouTube on this computer now, which is the old one, and where's the YouTube thing? I'll see YouTube and see if it comes through. And yeah, it's coming through. There should be a song coming up now. And now it just seems to be working okay. So yeah, I don't see any problems. Yeah, anyway, what we were talking about before that, Max Service. Now, before Max Service moved up to North Road, or Knotworth Clayton, they used to be here in Carnegie.
Oh, really? Whereabouts in Carnegie?
The corner of Koonang and North Road.
Oh, really?
You know when... do you know opposite... the Kentucky Fried Chicken shop? North Road?
Yes, approximately.
Not Kentucky, Red Rooster.
Right.
The other side of the road from Red Rooster, there's some old red brick warehouse, storehouse type things, they used to be there, and it was very cramped. It would have been about as big as my garage, I suppose, and it was just stacked with stuff. And this, they were only open Sunday or Saturday mornings, I think. And that was my recreation. Every Saturday morning, I'd go up to walk up to to Max Service, and there was another shop next door who was a scrap metal merchant, and he had a lot of electronic stuff as well, and he just basically sold the electronic stuff for scrap metal prices. It was fantastic. It was like a Wonderland come true sort of thing. And so that was fantastic. And you'd go there, pick up some bargains there, then you'd go next door to Max Service, and it was a fantastic situation. Have all that, two big junk stores about a couple of 100 metres from home. You didn't have to drag stuff too far. But
Yeah, because I'm just looking at that on Google Maps. It's very close to your mission's
very
place.
very close, yes.
It's not far from where I used to live either.
Yeah, that's
it'd
right.
be convenient if it was still there.
That would have been back in 2000 and maybe 80s, 90s it moved. Probably 80s. I think they moved up to where they are now. I haven't been there for years since it became a bubble pack city.
Yeah, it was. I feel a bit funny about that place because every time occasionally I think about it, I get this twinge because I turned down a job offer. I think I mentioned a while ago. They offered me a job there, and I could have been this close to making it my job to calibrate all the tectronic scopes and all of the HP multimeters, but I turned it down because they weren't going to pay me enough. And but then I realised I'm not actually getting paid much more than that now. But, I mean, such as these things. I was completely unqualified for it. It could have been fun, but the guy that was running it is... I probably shouldn't talk because I've actually put my name down just in case they need me again. But he's probably listening. But he was an interesting person, I'll just say that.
He just Mr. MS.
Yes.
Look, I only dealt with him when I was buying stuff. He seemed okay. But, yeah, I think he's probably had a business model. But, before they went Bubble City, you'd drive down the street and see they've got a whole new load of stuff in that front, the courtyard, the concrete yard. They have racks of stuff and all this stuff, like telecom stuff. Oh, wow. I can go. I thought, this is fantastic. You play around in there. Then inside you have some new stuff all piled up on those things. And you look at those compactors and see what's in there. Oh, it was just fantastic, wasn't it?
It just sounds like a constant hamfest.
It was
but
like...
with good stuff.
It was actually quite modern stuff compared to what you get at a Hamfest.
Well, yeah, that'd be true, wouldn't it? Yeah.
And now that Hamfest, there's not many of those shops around now. You've just got to go to Hamfest every couple of months, which is okay. But, yeah, when you had just the Mac service, it's like in the city. We used to go to RMIT and then just go to all those disposal stores in Elizabeth Street and everything. It was just like the whole life was just a Hamfest.
Yeah, it's a shame that places like that don't really exist anymore. I've always been just entranced by that footage that you have up of the Curly warehouse.
Oh, the Curly warehouse. Now that's another one. Yes, that was just acres of junk.
Literally acres. I mean, it was a farm, wasn't it?
Yeah, the horses and cows would graze between the junk, and have a telephone exchanges sitting out there. They'd be. Can you imagine if you had a mint condition one of those, nice polished wood? That would actually be worth a lot of money.
Yes.
People would buy one of those to put in their house. They would be pretty amazing things to have, and they were just out in the rain, all the wood being, rotten and being twisted by the rain and the heat. Absolutely incredible.
I wonder if the place is still there. I mean, if there's any junk still on the premises, or if they just cleared it all off. Do you know?
Well, considering Wallen has become like a metropolitan area,
it's gotten gentrified.
Yeah, I have looked at it in Google Earth. I can't see any junkyards. I think it's probably a house block now.
Oh, right.
I should think.
Put 5 townhouses on it.
Well, you put more than that. I think it was amazing.
50.
I wonder whatever happened to all that junk. Look, he's probably paid big money to sell it, and he's probably moved to Queensland or something.
Yeah, probably.
Who knows?
A lot of people seem to move to Queensland.
Yeah.
Yes, where the sunshine is. Yeah, I wouldn't mind finding a scrap metal farm like that one day. Oh, I did actually find a place that was a bit like that up in Wagga Wagga. There was a guy who had a barn full of old Apple Macs.
All right.
It was very much like what you see in that Curly warehouse video, but just old Apple Macintosh computers, hundreds of them, and quite a few ended up in my garage, which is part of the problem.
Yeah, there was another good place, Wolf Metals, up near Heidelberg. Oh, up,
Wolf metals.
you used to go up Coburg, up that northern city area, Epping somewhere, and there's a big warehouse, and it was just acres of junk of a lot of mechanical, but incredible amount of electronic and disposals junk going exceptionally cheap, absolutely amazing. And I used to take a trip up there every month. It was just a fantastic place, and you just wander around, get stuff. It was almost so cheap that you could buy. You're just paying a scrap metal price for it. And then I went up one day and said, "Oh no, and public aren't allowed it here anymore because of health and safety rules." I thought, "Oh well, that's the end of that then."
Oh, yes.
See, he wasn't making any more money selling it to us than scrapping it. So.
Right, back again, I got things and little things, so someone rang me up and started talking about things.
Oh, yes. It's happened sometimes.
Anyway, that's what I was going to say to Andrea. So how come your father's in England?
Sorry, I missed all of that. It dropped out again on my mix.
What sort of system are you using? I mean, the signal's coming through 160 in full quieting hi-fi. I can't understand you not being able to hear
I can't understand it either because, unless the level's all wrong...
I'm just monitoring off talkie, but John will be there and then he'll sort of drop out, sort of mid-sentence.
So you haven't got a 160 metre FM receiver going?
Okay, let's just hang on. I'll sort something out here. Am I dropping out as well?
No, you're staying fairly constant.
I can't see why. I've just mixed him into the
or does it discriminate between two different levels of signal and reject
I'm trying to sort that out now. So just stand by, and I'm on.
Because every time I've asked you a question, Andrew, you've either ignored me or not understood.
No, he hasn't ignored you.
No, I haven't ignored you. I can't hear you.
Yeah, that's the thing. Now
Well, there we go. If it doesn't work, it's probably because it's digital.
Oh God. Now. I'm monitoring on a VU meter here, but now...
Righto, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are we reading the right level now?
Well, coming up from there. Now...
If I don't suddenly have an outburst of coughing, because just getting over this awful cold that's been going around that makes you really sick and crook, and everybody seems to have had it around here, which hasn't been much fun.
Now, are you receiving John now, Andrew?
Yes, the level's much more consistent. It only dropped out once just before.
Yeah, so I was saying, how come your father's in England?
Well, he inherited a house over there and he didn't want to sell it, so he decided they'd move up there.
Oh, I see. That's all right, yes.
Yeah, so, it was my grandparents' house, and, it wanted to they split it between, when they passed away, my dad and my aunt got sort of half each, and then there was this big fuss because my aunt wanted to sell it and get on with her life, but my dad said, no, we can't. Got to keep this big house that
So
my grandfather actually built it. It's a 5-bedroom farmhouse.
No, yeah.
And it's on about maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 acres.
So you could put up lots of big antennas and everything.
Oh, it'd be perfect, aside from the fact that it's sort of in the middle of a valley. It's sort of at the bottom of a valley.
So you'd need another small property on top of the hill with microwave links going up there. But then I'm not sure what the attitudes are in England about doing all the sorts of missions we do here either.
They probably don't care.
That's a good question. I don't know what their approach is on crossbands, but it'd be quite good. I mean, both hills have caravan parks on the top. I don't think that they'd care very much. You can get away with a lot out there.
Yeah, well, that's right.
It's
Whereas in
basically
America, I was reading a few years ago, there was a person doing crossband replays, everything just like we do here. And the FCC and the ARRL were in it together doing enforcement actions against this person, and they were up to the level of having to sell their house because the fines were equal to the price of 2 or 3 houses that they'd already put against this person. All he was doing was running crossband replays and all the rest, but apparently over there the ARRL are the only people who can do a single-ended transmission or broadcast. No one else is allowed to do it, and so they got him on that rule, and they fined him for every count. And I was following it on the net, and I don't know what happened in the end.
Well, look, I think listening to some, on the net American hams, the swearing, the racial vilification, the hate speech, the carry on there.
Well, that's right, because you've got a sort of a human rights thing over there where you're allowed to have vigilantes and Ku Klux Klan and all sorts of really terrible fundamentalist churches and really homophobic things, and that's all perfectly fine over there. Well, at least we've got some controls here, which I think makes Australia a better country. And as for their gun laws, they're absolutely sickening.
Well, the thing is, like, if two people are having a crossband talking about, technical matters, and there's another up the band, people having simplex, swearing, calling each other terrible things, and hate speech.
Well, normally you only get that on CB here most of the time.
Well, it's just like CB over there all the time, and the person talking the technical stuff on crossband will go to goal, and the hate speech people will be allowed to keep going.
That's right. I mean, that's the sort of nonsense that can happen, unfortunately.
It doesn't make sense to me. I think it's just, if you look at, I'm sure there's people do this sort of stuff. I'm sure if you don't I think it's just matters of who you tend to upset. But it's interesting. Look, our regulations are pretty, I think they're very good. I don't see any, basically you can do what you like as long as you keep in the band. That's
right, and if you've got a scientific licence on a non-interference basis, you can actually go out of band, but yes. Which you need that, because if you're setting up some of the things I used to set up, like links and community radio transmitters and all the rest, well, I'm not actually licensed to be on those frequencies, but you needed a non-assigned being able to go out of band so you could operate that stuff as part of your volunteer work. But, well, I still could end up having to do it even now.
You have to make sure you're not interfering with anyone, of course.
Well, that's right. You've got to check all that first before you put the mission on.
Yes. So anyway, it's all very interesting to hear all about that. But England, so what part of England is he in there, Andrew?
So he's down in... I've just got a bit of a... sorry, I'm getting my own voice in my mix now. Yes, he's down in Cornwall, so down southwest, very pretty part of the country.
Oh, that certainly is. Now you're getting a mix of yourself. I wonder why.
Oh no, it's disappeared now. I can't hear myself, so it's all fine.
Right. Now
I was getting my own voice delayed back about a fraction of a second, so it was getting difficult to talk.
So it was like listening to the playhead or a tape recorder.
That's right. Yes. Look, it's a very scenic country, the old England, isn't it?
I'd love to have a look at England, but I don't think I'm ever going to afford to go anywhere like that at the rate things are happening.
No, that's right. You won't be able to go there.
It is very pretty. Well, parts of it are. I prefer the sort of Australian landscape a bit more. It's a bit more vibrant over there. Everything's just grey and green. Even on a sunny day, everything's got that sort of patina of grey to it. But I haven't seen a huge amount of the UK. Mostly just Cornwall, which is like, well, it's lots of farms, really.
It is lots of farms. Look, Australia is great. It's got the great expanses and... it's a pretty interesting sort of country, but the rolling lowlands and the hills of England, good old England, are quite nice, and Scotland I love. It's fairly vast country, and it's got nice vistas and things. Look, every country's got something going for it to some extent. Look, the weather can be pretty bad in the UK, but if the weather's okay, it's quite pleasant.
Yeah, it is quite nice.
I suppose at least they don't have all the bushfire problems, although they do get them sometimes over there, but not like we do.
No, well, they haven't got gum trees. That's the main thing. Trees with
well, that's right. We should really replace all the gum trees with non-flammable trees to stop the bushfires. In fact, I was watching one of those hysterical programs about what happened in Australia 40,000 years ago. Apparently there used to be another species of plant interspersed with the gum trees that didn't burn, well, not very easily, and that used to make it so bushfires weren't very common, but the indigenous people did their burning off, which killed this other plant, but the gum trees, of course, can be burnt. In fact, they depend on being burnt to reproduce, and it got rid of all this other plant, which then meant that there wasn't that buffer, which then made the bushfire thing far worse than it originally was. So really what they should do if they want to keep the gum trees is reintroduce whatever this plant was between every gum tree to stop that happening.
Well, that's right. And countries where they've imported gum trees, they've had the same thing happen. Lots of fires occur. But Yeah, look, things change in time, nothing stays the same. But, when the big bushfires of 2009 around Healesville and that, I remember going up there and just dead sticks everywhere, looked a total desolated scene, like something out of World War One.
Yeah, and driving up through to King Lake looked like that too after all that.
Now, I was just up there just the other week, you wouldn't even know there's ever been a fire there.
That's right, I know.
It just looks
You
vibrant.
see a few black branches in between all the green.
That's right, and that's only 10 years. So the bush...
Yes, of course, that means we're due for another one because they have a cycle of about once every 10 or 12 years anyway.
Well, they come and go. It's just that people put their houses in the middle of the bush and what they expect.
Well, what they really should do is build houses like Bilbo Baggins had in Lord of the Rings, where it's out underground with round porthole windows. Then you could have big round porthole furnace doors that shut over the windows.
Yep.
And then the house would be perfectly safe. The fire could burn right over it. You might need an oxygen supply. In fact, some of Hitler's bunkers, he had oxygen supplies, so that if the place on top was firebombed, which sucks out all the oxygen, he wouldn't die.
Is that right?
Yes, so apparently if you have an underground house in a really bad bushfire, it will suck all the oxygen out and you'll suffocate, so you do need some breathing oxygen, but that shouldn't be too hard to do, because you probably only need to breathe it for 5 or 10 minutes while the fire goes over, and then the oxygen will come back. So if you took that precaution and you had your underground house and you made sure the round hobbit porthole windows were shut with their furnace doors on a fire danger day, it'd be really good. And it would be fairly constant temperature and all in all a nice house.
Oh, I think I have to get one of those. They sound lovely. Idea.
Yes, well, if you've read Lord of the Rings, that's what he had, and that's, in fact, the film had a house like that, except that they did it in New Zealand, didn't they? They found some countryside that looked like the bit of England where Tolkien lived or whatever.
That's right.
But yes, so that's actually what you want.
Yeah, well, that's the way to go. And, of course, the oxygen could catch fire too if it got too many flames.
Yes.
Not like what happened in the Apollo whatever capsule.
Oh, yes. That's what happened.
Apollo 1 it was.
Apollo 1.
And they worked out if you had 5 pounds per square inch oxygen, humans could breathe it in space, that would be fine, which actually lightened the demands of the airframe, because that was the whole thing. To make it light enough, they wanted to have low pressurisation. The only thing is on the ground, to have it testing so you still had the same positive pressure with the atmosphere there, they had it pressurised at more than an atmosphere, which made it really bad if something happened, and of course it incinerated 3 astronauts.
Yep, a switch shorted out, they all went for a burn.
There's a whole thing on the internet all about that. I've read it all.
Well, I only learn by their mistakes.
Well, that's right. There were big arguments as to whether that was a good approach even back then, and NASA wanted mixed oxygen and other gases, and then there was the argument about how many megabucks per microgram of extra weight if you made the airframe stronger to have the higher pressure, because you need more pressure if there's less oxygen in the atmosphere. It goes on and on and on with all the arguments. It's all quite interesting to read.
Yes.
The deep water the underwater breathing apparatus is quite interesting as well. I think a few years ago they were talking about using liquids instead of gases to actually sort of give divers an air supply, like breathing a fluorinated solvent with oxygen dissolved in it instead of actual compressed air, or whatever gas mix they use to breathe deep sea diving.
Right. Yeah, it's because those old, kits where you'd wear that big rubber suit with a big bulb thing on your head and go down, that'd be terrible.
And the hose going all the way up to the
and
surface.
someone
If it snagged, well, you'd suffocate.
And someone turning the thing, imagine they got tired, you'd have no air. I mean, last thing I want to go in that'd be a terribly claustrophobic type of...
Yeah, it'd be very claustrophobic. There seems to be more thunderstorm activity starting to break in, so we must be going to have some bad storms.
There could be. I guess a shark wouldn't eat you, but a swordfish could cut the line and have no water.
Yeah, well, some of those stingrays and that, like Stephen Irwin got cut in half or something with the
he got stung by one in the heart.
Well, yeah, but I think they're sharp down the edge, so they could probably cut one of those hoses in half.
Yeah, they could. There's a lot of bad things in the sea. And,
I remember seeing the stingrays in that thing at Manly in Sydney, and I thought, well, I wouldn't like to be in the water with one of those.
No, you could get stung. Yeah, so those old suits, they had to have lead weight so you wouldn't bobble up in the air. But you'd go down a fair way because you had your own little atmosphere in the thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Down hundreds of feet further than you can go with free diving. And you shouldn't get the bends because the pressure will be constant, I suppose, in your little suit.
Yeah, that's right.
If a swordfish cuts your
Well, that
suit...
was actually the problem. If you had nitrogen in there and then you came up, then you had too much nitrogen in your blood and it expands and bubbles up in your veins, and that's what causes the bend.
It must be
Gives
terrible.
you an embolism. It's
I
bad.
know, the bends would be a very bad thing. Yeah, I've never been into scuba diving.
So don't buy a Mercedes, it will give you the bend.
That's right. I think they're endless money pits anyhow.
Well, they are. Well, actually, I drove one for a while. It wasn't too bad.
Well, the older ones weren't too bad, but the modern ones are just full of electronics and they pop
I
up
wouldn't
without
want a
any-
modern one. I'd go and get a 1967 250S 4-on-the-floor manual if I got one.
It'd be much
If
better.
I had the money to collect cars, which was another interest I had, but I don't really have the money to do that.
Yeah, well, the getting the bends in the water, but those big suits. I mean, if your suit leaked, you'd be stuffed, wouldn't you? You could.
Well, yes, it would bubble up full of water. Well, I presume it worked on the principle they fed more pressure of air down there than... Because the thing just sat on your shoulders, so it was like a diving bell. In fact, you couldn't tip your head upside down or just go boop and fill up with water, I dare say.
It'd be terrible.
So you'd have to stay the right way up, and then the air pressure was probably maintained to keep the water below your mouth, or certainly below your nose.
So even though, you'd have to have as much pressure in the suit as you would have water pushing on
That's
you.
right, otherwise it would fill up with water and you would drown.
So basically, it's just the same as swimming.
A diving bell.
It's swimming without a suit. You've just got the same
Almost,
pressure.
yeah, because it just sort of sat on you. It didn't make that much of a seal, some of the really old ones. I think it just depended on the air pressure. The newer ones probably had a seal, but the older ones I don't think did.
So if the hose popped, you just fill up and...
It just filled up with water and drowned, and because the thing was so heavy, you couldn't swim to the top because of the heavy brass casting, and you'd know everything that was happening for a little while until you died.
Oh, what a terrible... I would not want to be...
I've had nightmares of things like that and woken up in fright. I don't think I'd like to have the real thing.
How is it you have a nightmare, something really bad's happening, and then you wake up and think, well, thank God for that. It's a great feeling, isn't it?
It is, but if it was happening for real, you wouldn't be able to wake up out of it, which would be the terrible thing. I mean, imagine those people when they're in an aeroplane and it all breaks up. Now, they'd probably stay conscious and see what's happening for quite a lot of what's going to happen until they hit the ground.
Well, if you're 50,000 feet up, doing 600 miles an hour, it breaks up. I don't think you'll last long because it's minus 50 degrees. Wind hitting you at 600 miles an hour at that temperature, I think you'd stay conscious about a second.
Yeah, and the air pressure's
You
pretty
might.
low as well. You might black out.
You'd black out.
Black out.
Yeah.
I think you black out in a few seconds at that
Well, you
height.
wouldn't really...
I think you would, yeah.
And then there was this thing on TV where there was this guy who was filming these people skydiving.
Yeah.
Anyway, he forgot to put his parachute on, and he jumped out, and he filmed them all the way down, and then he realised, and then the thing videoed right down until he hit the ground. I think it was one of those pneumatic
And it went black.
BVU 50 combinations. It just went black, and they got the tape out of it, and they played it, and yes, it killed him, of course.
Oh, did it? He could have hit...
Well, there have been people falling out of things that have hit the right type of bush and survived from
They've
incredible heights.
hit powder snow,
That's right, or
or
the
a haystack or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can happen. You can be very lucky. And
I think I'd buy 10 Tats Lotto tickets if I did that, because they'd probably all win.
now jumping out of planes and something I don't want to do either. I think it's pushing
No, I
fate
don't
a bit
really
far.
feel... I think that... I mean, if the aeroplane was burning and it was all going to go for a wreck, well, then I'd be thankful I had a parachute to have a second go at life. But
Yeah.
I don't really think my idea of going in an aeroplane is to get in one to deliberately jump out of it for no reason at all.
That's right. Look, it is a great experience apparently when you jump out to that free fall bit, but It is pushing the limits of survivability, and
Well, it is, yes.
people do die. I mean, they say
Yeah.
someone's had 10,000
Well, I suppose
jumps.
some of that bungee jumping's a bit like that too.
I wouldn't do
I
that.
don't know whether I fancy that either. And what if the rope breaks, you go head first onto the rocks at the bottom that they seem to just miss, or you misjudge how long the thing has to be and you
Yeah.
hit the bottom and get killed.
Well, that's right. And just the I don't think your body's meant to be, those forces are meant to be involved. And
No.
you could have, if you've got some weakness you wouldn't even know about, you could end up having, big problems or...
That's right. You could have a
stroke or
brain aneurysm pop and you'd be dead,
Yeah.
or some other thing that no doctor would diagnose. But when you put yourself under those G-forces, it just pops and you just bubble.
Exactly. I just don't think putting yourself in that situation where you're just asking for mishaps to happen.
Well, no, I think it's asking for trouble.
I think it is. And, look, modern parachutes are pretty good and everything, but things do go wrong. They can collapse or whatever. Then you've
Well,
got to
that's
use
why they
emergency
generally
chute.
have two of them, but some people then go and detach the one that's jubbed and they release the second one, and because there's a bit of the other one there, it tangles or it does something, and then they still don't survive.
Oh, it's terrible.
The failure rate for those things, even the commercial operations, it's definitely not zero.
Oh, definitely
I
not.
mean-
Well, no. And you can't really have 10 parachutes.
No, look, every year there's quite a few parachute deaths, and when you consider the number of people jumping...
Well, I remember about a year ago there was this family that paid for their mother's 53rd birthday present. They bought her a ticket to go skydiving, which she always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And she did the skydiving, but somehow they stuffed up, and one jumper hit another one, and they all ended up dead. 3 of them tangled together, and they're all dead on the ground.
Well, it looks very popular. A lot of people give their mother-in-laws, a ticket to skydiving. It seems to be the thing to do, particularly if they're fairly rich.
I mean, I might go in a hot air balloon, that's probably okay. At one stage I thought of doing crossbands from a hot air balloon, but when I saw the price I thought, well, that's a little bit expensive, and it's in the daytime, so you'd have to specially stage the crossband to be replayed later on. And whether they'd let you do it, unless you're mates with a pilot, it may not go down so well.
Look, I've been in a hot air balloon. It's quite fun, except when they put that flame on. It's terribly noisy, but when
Yes, I know, you can hear it when they go over.
when the flame's off, it's quite peaceful.
Gee, that was a loud crash of lightning then.
Oh, lightning's coming. Yeah, they fly over here sometimes. One time I was sleeping because they do it early in the morning.
And you hear this roaring noise
I heard
switching
this
on and off.
roaring.
That's right.
And
We
there
used to hear it in Hawthorne when I lived in Hawthorne, because quite often those balloons went over Hawthorne.
And there was this enormous balloon coming down on the house. It was almost about to spike itself on the tenors. And
Yeah, that's happened. In fact, that has actually happened. I reckon they should call them buoyants because they're buoyant and they float.
And I thought,
But
well,
anyway.
if they had stuck on the tenors, then I would have fined them for breaking the tenors. But then they put a
Well,
big
yes, you'd
burst
have
of
to complain to CASA, I suppose.
big burst of gas, and they went up again, which was all to the feel good.
Imagine if when they were just about to hit the tenors, they pulled the string to make the gas tap open, and the string came off in their hand and all jubbed and...
I know, have a balloon on your house.
Do you know where they launch from? Because I remember when I was in Murray.
They launch them often from Studley Park. When I used to go for my walks when I lived in Hawthorne, I used to come back home through Studley Park and watch them. I used to walk around where they were on the ground.
Yeah.
And I even had a chat to some of the people. That's why I thought I'd do a crossband from there until I found out the price. I think it's $300 or $400 just to get on the thing.
It's not cheap.
And they give you champagne breakfast and you take off in Yarra Bend, Studley Park. That's one of the sites. It used to be good to watch. I used to hang around and watch it all happening at about 5 in the morning or so on a clear day, which they do it. And then if the wind's going the right way, they go over Yarra Valley and they get pissed drinking expensive bottles of champagne and all the rest. I suppose if something goes wrong and they jump, you've got all this smashed champagne on the ground.
That's right. Now, from one of our correspondents' message, I think it's today, didn't help Brian Naylor. England has long-wave missions, we don't. I don't think we've been talking about Brian Naylor. We did talk about
Well, he
fires.
died on the Black Saturday.
He did, yes. He did.
I used to know Brian Naylor.
Really?
Yes, I knew him quite well in GTV9 when I was there.
Yeah. Oh, well.
I haven't come across the
And
name.
I used to know Sir Eric Pearce.
Sir Eric
Pearce liked cats.
Did he really? Oh.
And because Marmalade used to come along and see me in my news maintenance room, Sir Eric Pearce used to come along to follow the cat or whatever he did. Then we'd end up having a good chat about all sorts of things, and the cat would be there, and I'd have an excuse to not do any work for about half an hour as long as something didn't suddenly break, and I had to piss off quickly and make it work again in minus time like it used to happen. But yeah, it was all quite entertaining.
Yeah, so it's all good. Yeah, so the hot air balloons, yeah, well, they're quite fun things. Well, they take off from around the Yarra Parks or somewhere like that.
Well, like I said, Studley Park, Yarra Bend is one of the very common places, and then there's somewhere on the other side of Melbourne if the wind's going the other way. I forget where it is. But,
they need a hydrogen balloon to be more fun.
Oh, yes.
But yeah,
You wouldn't need such a big balloon.
Often when I go for my walks around here, I look in the direction. I can see where Yarra Bend is when I walk up the hills. I do actually see the balloons taking off.
I used to see them from Rowville going to school in the morning.
Is that
was
right?
a long time ago, yeah. Something else that just reminds me of
and
is...
if you walk up Ferny Creek or the hill in between, you can certainly see all across to Melbourne where Studley Park is and all the rest, and you can actually... Even when you can't see the balloons, you see the little lights in the air flashing on and off as they turn their flame on and off. You see that first, and if the wind's going the right way and you watch for long enough, they get closer, and then you see they are actually balloons.
Is that right? And what were you reminded of there, Andrew?
Skywriting. I haven't seen any skywriting in a while.
No, I haven't seen that
Used
for
to
a
be a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I seem to remember seeing it all the time when I was younger, but I don't see much of it anymore.
It used to happen all the time in the 60s and 70s.
It seems a bit silly because they start writing the word. By the time they finish the last letter, the first letter is all obscured and
That's
blown away.
Yeah, no, but I suppose if you're watching it, you can remember what the letter was.
Remember the blimps that used to the advertising
Yes.
blimps? The Goodyear blimp and what was that chocolate company blimp?
That's right.
Yeah, they used to fly around quite often with the big things flying, and yeah, they seem to have disappeared, but
And
they were quite
there was
fun.
that blimp at Moorabbin for a while, and you could go for joyrides, but even
Yeah.
then it was $150 a flight, which back in the 80s was quite an amount of money.
Yes, well, it's pretty expensive upkeep keeping your blimp.
Yes, that also
Mr. was
reminds
telling
me.
about things that fly. He said basically you look at the thing and feed it lots and lots of money and it'll fly sometimes. That's why he doesn't fly his aeroplane anymore. That's sitting in his shed.
Oh, right.
Yes, the old missions, the Cumes blimp. What was the story behind that, without giving away too much incriminating detail?
Yeah, someone's blimp went somewhere and landed somewhere. Yeah.
I remember that. It went through air traffic lanes. It caused a stir with cattle.
No, some company had a blimp and it went...
Somebody detached it sounds like.
Well, Pink Floyd
Yeah,
did
that's
that in
right.
England. They were flying this blimp shaped like a pig, I think it was, over Battersea Power Station. It got away and it got in the air traffic lanes for Heathrow Airport or something, and there was a big stink about that.
Now, of course, they're worried about little drones that weigh about 2 ounces might hit a plane and
That's right. Well, I
cause them
think
to
a bird
crash.
would do more damage.
I think it would, and a blimp would probably be worse too.
Yeah, because a lot of birds that can get high enough to hit an aeroplane are quite big, and they're heavier than a cat.
That's right.
Now, some cats are 10 kilograms, or some of the birds are heavier than that. We imagine that going into a jet engine. No wonder the engine goes bang, pop, and it all stops working. And like when they hit both engines in New York and that plane landed on the Hudson, that was quite interesting. But yeah.
Don't they throw frozen chickens into those engines to make sure they can take the strain?
Well, they're meant to be unfrozen, and somebody made a mistake and put frozen ones in there, and it smashed everything up.
Oh, really?
Oh no.
Yeah, well, yes, we don't see any blimps or skywriting anymore. It's so boring, isn't it? We do see the helicopters flying around all the time.
Yes, I
yes,
see
and-
lots of helicopters flying over here. I also see a Sturman PT-17, all nicely restored, flying over here sometimes. That was America's answer to the Tiger Moth with a
Right.
radial engine. I see the odd
And a
Tiger
duff
Moth.
blimp.
Obviously these things take off from the likes of Moorabbin, but they come around the hills here on nice sunny afternoons, quite painting.
Yes, that's right. Oh, well, a little vintage plane would be nice, a tiger moth.
Well, that was the other thing I wanted to do once my career was up and running, was get a licence to fly an aeroplane.
And you couldn't because you'd got broadcast ops, you thought you're going to get all this money, have a great career.
Well, that's what they originally told us. Well, actually, if I'd stayed doing my ABC contract, if the other things hadn't happened with the family, well, then I would have had the money because the other people who didn't get pulled out of it made good money. But just doing a salaried job in electronics, no way. That changed after about 1976.
You could have had your little Tiger Moth plane at Essendon. You could have had, a Mercedes to drive around, an old vintage Mercedes.
Well, when I was in primary school, there was a guy there. He had a Tiger Moth at Moorabbin. He had a boat at the St Kilda Mariner. A mansion house in Burwood with a big TV antenna on it. I was too young to know it was an HF beam. And he had a holiday house. He had all of that because he was a technician in Channel 9.
And he had broadcast ops, and all of a sudden
that's right.
It went down the tube.
When TV was new, apparently it did pay big money, but unfortunately the wages froze so that they were still paying the same number of dollars 30 years later, which the dole caught up with it and overtook it.
So you could have had all this great lifestyle, beach house, Tiger Moth, a yacht, racing yacht, going overseas to England, looking at Cornwall. It would have been a fantastic life. Now you're stuck.
Ted Albert did of Albert Studios in Sydney.
Now you're stuck in Upway.
Upway.
Well, these houses back in 1980 were only about $5,000 or $6,000.
You could have bought 10 of them if you had a good wage.
That's right. and the terrace houses in Richmond that cost millions of dollars were $10,000. But if you bought a house in Upway, it was about half the price of a terrace house in Richmond. They were cheap holiday houses. That's why they're built like that. I mean, you didn't have to have a permit in those days or have a proper builder. If you look at this house, not one wall or window frame is square. It was obviously built by an amateur who was learning how to bang a nail into a piece of wood while he was building it. Yeah, if you look at how it's built closely, you see that it's not very well built.
But it doesn't matter, you never look at the walls because you can't see them, you've got junk piled up.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
That's a benefit.
It is. So
also, if you have a lot of junk, you don't have to have so much power going into the heaters.
No, that's right.
Now, when the house was empty, you had to have the heaters on full blast on a cold night.
Yeah.
All night to keep it warm, even though it's insulated. But once all the equipment was moved in, it would get too hot and you have to turn them down quite quickly. So there's actually a benefit.
There is a benefit too, yeah, that's right.
Saves on gas and electricity.
So do you get much stuff from Mac Service?
I got a few things in Mac Service, and then I went there, like Andrew said, and it suddenly turned into not selling to the public and wanting megabucks for things. I said, but hang on, you want $1,000 for this old HP Crow? I can buy one in a Hamfest for $20, so why would I buy it off you? And he said, get out of here, I'm not selling to the public, I'm not listening to people like you.
Really? He
got really cross when I said that.
That's terrible, isn't it?
I remember I used to go there after school and rummage through the bins of
originally it was in North Road.
I was just saying that, yeah.
In that factory there. There it was really cheap.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It was like Waltham's.
Yeah, Waltham Dam.
Or United Trade or Ham Radio Suppliers. But once he went up market, and then it turned out a lot of things he was selling for these super high prices, people bought them, and I got feedback from people who bought them. They said, but it hasn't been recalibrated or fixed to anything.
Really?
So it was still the same $20 Crow from a Hamfest, sold at certain prices. It still needed all the fixing that one would need from a Hamfest, which is why you only pay $20 for it.
Yeah, a bit sad. Yeah, well, it's all to the good. Oh, yeah, you're saying, Andrew, you went there after school and spent all your pocket money on junk.
Well, yeah, I used to grab all the circuit boards I could find. I got some of the switching subboards out of a PDP-8.
Really?
And all kinds of fun bits and pieces. I used to sit there with my soldering iron, pulling all the electrolytic capacitors off, so I could build guitar pedals. And I can't do that now.
We had a PDP-8 in school. I think Trinity Grammar was one of the first schools in Australia, if not, it might have been Victoria, I forget which, to actually have a computer. It was a PDP-8.
A big computer. You could have been
And as I remember, it ran on an operating system, I think it was called Focal, They had a row of key switches where you had to manually key in what would effectively be the BIOS. If you didn't get that right, it wouldn't read the paper tape of focal, and if you didn't get all that right, you couldn't run any programs. And it took about an hour to do all that, and if there was a power glitch, you had to start all over again.
Oh, how sad.
They cost as much as a house.
They probably did, probably as big as one too.
Yes.
You could have lived in it.
Now, on a tangent to that, I have this theory I was thinking about the other day in terms of the cost of things, and you may have noticed this trend, or whether it is actually a trend, but I think that everyday items like bread and shampoo and apples and things, and champagne, I think that they've gotten more expensive. Everyday items have gotten more expensive over the past X number of years, whereas the really big items like TVs and computers and furniture have gotten much cheaper.
Well, that's because they're made like rubbish. Also, if you read the old 1970s and 80s Electronics Australias and such like, one of the qualities of how good a piece of equipment was its serviceability when technicians come along to fix it. So it had to be designed with components you could solder in by hand and the technician could fix. That's why they still train technicians then. Now they don't. Whereas nowadays, there's no regard to serviceability by technicians. It's designed to simply plug it in. If it breaks, you repair it with a dustbin, which I disagree with. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. I mean, when I was a student in RMIT, I was told I would never ever need to get a serviceman in my life to fix anything. I could fix everything myself. Well, these new digital whoozy with the components the size of a bee's dick or something, you can't even see the components, and you certainly can't find out what they are.
No, that's right. But also, I think it's to keep the populace happy, because they can buy big item TVs and computers and all sorts of stuff.
And they get that dopamine rush.
They get the dopamine, and they think.
And then 12 months down the track it goes pop, or it gets squiggly lines all over the screen.
Apart from that, they're happy because they're buying the consumer goods, and they're keeping up with the Joneses and the latest thing. Yet they're forgetting that the bread and the milk and everything is going up in price, and we're being screwed.
Yeah, and I think it was on Foreign Correspondent, in those factories that make all those things in China or wherever, what happens to the people who work there? If something doesn't work when it gets to the end of the production line, the person who they think is responsible is taken out and severely beaten.
Shot.
In some cases, they are actually killed.
Oh, really? They haven't got a social credit.
There's actually blood on a lot of things that we buy cheaply because of that.
Oh, yeah. It would have been much better, if we still had tariffs, and then we were paying $100,000 for a plasma, LCD TV.
Well,
a car would be about $500,000.
We'd probably have the wages in our jobs to do that, so it wouldn't really matter. It just roll on like it did in the 60s.
It doesn't work in a global economy. You can't have that. It just doesn't work anymore, unfortunately.
Oh, that's the thing. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Nope, you can't.
What you find is what's happening now is we've got an ever-increasing population and fewer jobs. So what they've been saying on the ABC is one day they're going to have to pay people a living wage, not the dole, not the pension, which is a pittance, but an actual proper living wage to not work.
Well,
because
it's not
going to be necessary for everyone to work, but it's certainly going to be necessary for everybody to be able to help the economy by buying things, feed themselves to stay alive, etc., etc.
Well, a lot of people don't work anyhow. They got jobs of standing around holding a sign in a street, or sitting in an office.
I think that would be pretty hard work, standing up all day.
Well, sitting in an office, looking at a computer, doing Facebook, and being paid in the government or something.
Yeah, well, that's right. Politicians, well, a lot of them are qualified as liars with their lazy lying bastards degrees, so of course they don't actually have to do any work. They can bill you megabucks and they don't even have to do the job you've paid for. So of course they'll get into an office where they don't have to do any work either. A
plywood car. The Q sticker inside the Seavers, wasn't the Arts and
There was a song about that. I think it was a cardboard car in the video. The song DB Boulevard Point of View. Did you see that video?
No, I didn't.
That's a great video. It's
It's a cardboard or plywood car that she has to fix and struggle to make it work, and it's all about as good as an Austin, and it's such a good video. I like it.
An Austin 7. Yeah, well, look, I think these work for the dole schemes or work for no scheme. Look, who knows? Maybe some people are saying that we're facing a big crisis now, and the economic system's going to totally crash. And
well, Dick Smith says we'll end up with an underclass and a civil war. And he brings up the big Louis the 16th or 17th, whoever he was, where that happened, and the last Tsar. In both cases, an underclass was left to grow and be more and more dissatisfied until they revolted and they killed Louis, or the last Tsar. And in fact, they became the Bolsheviks, didn't they, and the Red Army, and that's what we have in Russia now. Yes, so it's all quite interesting. But if you read history, this sort of thing has happened cyclically again and again. So Dick Smith could actually be right.
Dick should be right. I mean, really, the society could change, and the economic model we've got now isn't necessarily the only way things can go.
Well, we could go to a socialist system.
Well, Australia's half socialist anyhow, really.
That's right.
Compared to a lot of countries.
When somebody in America talked about our Medicare system, they said, but Australia's a communist country.
Well, in some respects it could be almost, but it's certainly it's always had a socialist bent to it, which is nothing wrong with that.
Well, actually,
in
some
moderation.
Of those countries like Autofonland and Telefonland, all those ones up north there where they've all gone DAB, apparently they have an economy that works really well. It's based on looking after the people rather than looking after the business. And apparently their system's really successful.
Well, they're tiny little countries. They're not, you can't compare them with Australia or the US or somewhere.
Yes, they're very small, and I think that their populace is quite homogenous as well.
Exactly.
So it's easy to implement those sort of socialist systems, assuming that everybody wants the same thing. But as soon as you have a whole bunch of people who might not necessarily have the same idea of what they want in life, then you get people disagreeing, and then unfortunately that system doesn't work when you have a very sort of diverse, interesting society.
I mean, Australia is a very diverse.
They brought in communism as well. Perhaps the same problems arose there as well. Yeah,
well, Australia's a very diverse, society, and it's not going to work. That type of socialism here, I don't think.
And also, for it to sort of work, you kind of have to block off any input that you have from any other countries, because then all of a sudden you think, hold on, why have they got all these freedoms and we don't? And I think that's probably what they do in certain big countries that have firewalls.
That's right, yes. It's lovely. And our Mr. Kim country, that'd be similar.
Yes, that's right. That's one of them. They don't want. They want to think that they're on the top of the world, and maybe they are. If you think that your country's doing it better than every other country in the world, and you don't know any better, well, maybe
people might be happy.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe you're very happy living in your totalitarian dictatorship. It's only when you see overseas or into other countries that you know what you're missing out on. Or
that's right.
Yes.
So yes, it really gets down to, if they get rid of what they've got now, what can they honestly replace it with that's going to work?
Yes, in those countries they've snipped FM and forced you to listen to DAB, which is all very good, because the government knows best and knows what people want.
Well, DAB in Upway quite often goes for a verbal mission, like a mobile phone. You can't hear properly. But also, when you work it out, it's lower Fi than FM, because the MPEG bit rates are actually quite low, because they fix so much stuff onto each thing. So they have like 64-bit stereo. What's that, 32-bit per channel? Well, that's not going to be very far.
I know. Look, it's been running for a long time and it hasn't taken up. I think it's never going to get very popular here.
Well, when you consider that the young people use mobile phones as their radio,
well, why wouldn't you?
Listen off the mobile phone radio, that probably is by default the digital broadcast network.
It is.
Not all these DABs and that anyway, because how many young people buy a radio that's styled like their grandfather would have bought? Now,
I do.
I've got it, so do I. I bought a Bush, it looks like a classic Bush antique radio, but it does DAB and everything, because they're on special in Dick Smith for...
And they're crap
$80.
radios, absolutely crap.
Well, the DAB bit of it works.
Yeah, but it's interesting. The DAB sounds about as bad as FM. The FM sounds as bad as AM, and the AM's almost unintelligible. They're just the most...
It'll work in the background to monitor things in the background when you... I know it's not super fine, but you can actually hear the stuff on there.
Like the DAB sounds about as good quality as AM does on a GE Super Wireless.
Right, yeah.
It's just crap, and you look inside, and they've got the cheapest speaker made in China.
That's right.
It's just a crap speaker. Everything is just crap. It's got this this muffled no tone.
Yeah. Well,
It's just.
I got it for about. I think it was marked at $50.
It should have been $1.
I got it for a lot less than that from Tricky Dickies when it was all
God.
going for a wreck.
They look impressive. They've got that dial that doesn't,
That's right.
but the DABs
that
are pushed.
retro
Yeah.
1950s look they have.
Yeah, it doesn't. I bet it sounds. I bet the original DAB radios it was based on sounded more fire and long wave than the Bush
the
DAB
original
radio
one
does on
didn't
DAB.
have DAB in it. It just had AM or AM and FM. In fact, I think the original one was AM only.
Yes. Then they had FM, VHF as they used to call it there.
That's right.
But yeah, look, I think DAB's crap. It's not going to look. It's it'll be around for a while, but I think it just hasn't taken off anywhere. In fact, a lot of the stations don't even mention their DAB now. They mention their apps. They don't mention.
That's
digital
I
radio.
haven't
right.
noticed that.
Apps. Well, that's the new digital radio because the young, who are probably the biggest listeners, just have their iPhone and they can plug their little earbuds into that, and that's probably what they do.
Well, you can go anywhere that's got coverage and listen to any radio station in the world. I mean, how good is
That's
that? And you can even listen to the missions on it and the replays. So you can listen to Henry, and you can listen to anything on it. Why would you worry about a station that just plays crap music from on DAB?
Well, exactly.
Yeah. So it's.
Yeah, the only DAB station that I would go out of my way to listen to is probably Double J.
Double J.
The rest of them are not. I don't know. Well, you can listen to the in-store advertising channels of like Coles and stuff.
But Double
That's what
J's on FM anyhow.
Well, some of them used to be on ACS.
Oh, Triple J's.
That's a thing I must fire up again. I made an ACS decoder and I stuck it in an FM tuner. And you used to be able to listen to 67 and 92K ACS channels on
Right.
most of the FM stations. And then the tuner stopped working and I just haven't got around to fixing it. But I wonder if they still run that service.
I don't know. I listen to CR and SYN FM on DAB occasionally if I'm working in here.
Oh yeah.
But I haven't listened to any of the mainstream stations for a long time.
Yeah, I just tend to flick through them when I'm in the car. I've got a whole bunch on presets, including a lot of those community stations like Yarra Valley FM and all that.
Right. Yeah,
And they're quite good.
they are. I haven't listened to 3LO or the station formerly known as 3LO for years since Peter Evans died and Terry Lane went off the air.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I listen to. I find that I never used to listen to any AM radio when I was younger, but now I'm getting to that point where I'm listening to 3LO as quite a bit, and listening to the morning show and evening show on my drive. It's nice to hear some I don't know, commentary of that nature.
So you never listened to AM when you were younger?
No, I didn't. Actually, we listened to 3MP. That was what. my mum
Oh,
used
no
to
wonder you didn't
broadcast.
listen to AM if you've got that forced on you. 3MP, committed to caring.
That was the only AM station that we had in the car. AM.
And then there was 3CR, committed to caring, and people used to say committed to communism.
Well, it is committed to communism, but at least they have open in the open about it.
Yeah, some of the 3CR content is quite good. Some of the other content is a little bit. I don't know. It sort of gets on your nerves after a little while.
I wonder how many listeners they get, because they'll be talking to their little converted groups often.
That's a good question. I wonder how many listeners they have on AM.
A lot, I'd say, more than on DAB.
Right.
Because people can listen in the car.
And I find this, if I'm driving to, say, Ballarat or somewhere like that, the AM will work all the way. In fact, when I drove Anthony's truck to Adelaide and back, I could hear the AM stations all the way, but if I tuned to FM, they were always dropping out.
Well, it doesn't go as far, but...
Well, that just shows you which one's the best if you're travelling a long distance. The best thing to listen to is AM.
Yeah, it has its advantages, but,
Also, do you know why more modern AM receivers tend to sound bad? I mean, the one in our car is just awful.
Yeah, look, maybe they've got lower, narrow bandwidth filters or something in them, or they're just crap speakers, who knows? I mean...
I'm curious about that because every AM radio, people sort of my age and in my little peer group, they say, "Oh, why would you listen to AM? It sounds awful." And then I play them one of the little converted radios that you gave me, and it sounds great.
It does. Look, there's nothing wrong with AM. And older car radios were really good, sounded quite okay. It's just that I think they got the idea that people, FM was for music, AM was for talk, so make a narrower bandwidth so the interference won't be so bad. It's just, I don't know why it is, it's just crap. Because if you read the magazines of the 1940s and 50s, they're always trying to design wideband filters for AM and get the best quality out of AM and all sort of stuff. Then it all just went to crap and no one could really care. So it's just ridiculous. I mean, this 1927 radio I've got here sounds better than an AM than just about anything. You know, it's ridiculous. And that gave it a bad name. In fact, some of those car radios are so muffled, you really can't even understand them. It's just absolutely crap.
Like the one in my girlfriend's Toyota Corolla is just awful. I swear the audio must roll off about 4 kilohertz or something. It's,
4 kilohertz would be good. Have you done a response check?
My ears are not very good.
Most car radios, or most AM radios, start to roll off about 1K, and there's basically nothing much above 3K. They are absolutely disastrous. You would not believe how bad they are.
Yeah, because they have a very shitty ceramic filter in there. Now, you can buy wide ceramic filters, but they put the narrowest one it would do for sidebands. It's picking up AM.
If you have a car radio, if you've got a good response to 6kc, it sounds amazing compared to most car radios. 7 or 8, 9kc, it just sounds like FM, and most people couldn't really tell a difference. Most of the stations are broadcasting hi-fi or decent signals. It's just that it all gets filtered out in the wireless, and it's it's a terrible thing. I don't know why it's gone that way, but that's the way it is. It's quite sad, really. But, what model Corolla is it?
It's a 2005 hatchback Corolla, so reasonably recent. The radio in there needs to be replaced. The CD player's completely gone, but otherwise works fairly well.
We've got Corollas here. I think there were the late 2015 models. They don't have a CD player. I think they've got a USB port or something. But the AM is okay, and what you can do, the tone controls are separate, can be programmed to the setting or the station you're listening to. So what I've done on the AM, I've put up full treble and turned the bass down a bit, and on the AM stations it doesn't sound too bad if you do that.
Right.
So I don't know if your model is advanced as that, but the ones we've got can actually do that, and the AM actually, it's not hi-fi, but it's acceptable. It's not too super muffled. They're probably 4kc response or something if it's like that. But So,
well, the Sony head unit that I have in the Ford Laser, that has reasonable. It's quite a bit better. It's still not as good as one of those little old transistor radios, but it's got more high-end extension than the one in the Corolla. So maybe just buying a non-stock unit will improve the audio.
It might. I've got a couple of AM stereo car radios here. They're not for stereo, but they're usually a bit wider, 6 or 7kc wide, which makes a big difference. It sounds actually quite good. And in the old, tunable AM car radios, you could always cheat and just tune off a little bit and get some extra highs out. As long as it
that's right. So you're receiving one sideband and hardly the other one.
Makes a big difference.
A lot of digital things won't let you do that.
No, that's right. So you can just tune off a bit, and you get super tings coming out. So yes, it's a bit sad. So I think
Yes.
I think the manufacturers just deliberately did that to make it sound bad. In fact, a lot of FM radios, when FM came in, they made the AM more muffled, and they did that in DAB too. A lot of DAB radios, the FM, they had a little capacity, across the output of FM, so it just cut off the highs a bit, made it sound a bit inferior to DAB. It's just to make DAB sound really good. And of course, DAB. The thing is, DAB is boosted as transmitted. The signal is nothing. It's not like a hi-fi signal. If you listen to the same, ABC FM and the same signal on DAB, it sounds like two totally different signals. One sounds flat compared to DAB because DAB is just super boosted. If you get the CD and play it, it sounds like the FM signal, not like the DAB signal. It sounds like someone's got the loudness control on. Just super boost, super compressed.
Yes,
super
I never
everything.
thought the DAB sounded very good at all.
No, it's just crap. And look, it could be programmed to make it sound quite good. There's no reason why it can't sound like if they were running, 100 kilobits and not compressing the audio, it should sound better than FM.
128K would probably be right, because a lot of the links between the studio and the transmitter now, they're digital and they're 128K stereo.
Yeah.
So that's what you're listening to as the link between the studio and the transmitter.
Oh, I think we've got a call here from a foreign correspondent. Might have some information. The Holden Sievers is muffled on FM too. Yes, well, you need to go and tweak the IF, make it wider. Yeah, so and look, in the old days, the old car radios were less muffled. Yeah, I think they were. Well, that's all people had to listen to, I suppose.
Well, your radio from the tip sounds absolutely amazing.
Yes. Yes, that sounds really good.
Sound of that thing.
It is amazing how they sound so good.
I saw that YouTube video where you had that 1930s car radio with
That's
the
right.
cloud and cables.
Yep.
And all the octal valves. Now, you see those from time to time at both Shepherd and Handfest and the HRSA. I've seen quite a few of them.
Yeah, well,
over the
you
years.
could get one, because they're certainly, compared to modern car radios, really, they're almost phi,
Yeah.
and they're very sensitive, the six-tube radio with an RF
Well,
stage.
one of the things sitting in the back of my shack to pick up 160 metres was one of those tweaked up, but it drew a horrendous current at 6 volts for its vibrary thing, so I didn't use it much.
It shouldn't draw that much, 5 or 6 amps or something.
Yeah, but back in the 70s, to make a 5 or 6 amp low voltage supply without involving car batteries was a challenge. If you went to all the usual shops, they sold you the transformers to make HT supplies. Nowadays, it's the reverse. If you want to make a supply for your valve thing, it's a big problem. But there's no problems making a 100 amp 6 volt supply if you want to. It's really easy.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you can just, like I was doing, just running off another old radio HT supply is the way to do it. So, yeah, no, little pre-octal valves, little 5 pins or 6, 8 pins, 7 pins or something.
Oh, the UX-based ones.
UX
with
pins.
The 2 big pins and the smaller pins.
Yeah, all those things. Really ancient set. But they were quite good valvies.
Well, actually, 6.3 volts came out as the voltage because of 6 volt cars.
Well, that's right. Yeah, good idea, isn't it?
It's a pity they didn't start off cars at 24 volts or something, because there would have been a lot less starting problems.
Can you imagine if they had 6 volt cars? See, the Americans didn't go to 12 volts till quite late, to the 60s, really.
Yeah, that's right. Darrell Braithwaite, before he developed epilepsy when his parents sent him to this place at Courset, had a Ford Pilot.
Ah, V8 Pilot.
V8 flat, a flat side valve.
Yep.
And it was 6 volt.
Yep. And the original Holden was 6 volts.
All the VWs were 6 volt.
Yep. And you turn the key and it'd start, and you're driving along on high beam, you've got this yellow, a feeble bulb pointing towards a road.
Well, 'cause,
yellow
so
thing.
much of the voltage is getting to the headlight globe.
Now, apparently 6 volt systems I've read that if they're working properly, there is nothing wrong with 6-volt lighting or starting systems. It's just when the connections go bad and all sort of stuff, it gets dim.
Which unfortunately in the environment of a car is guaranteed to happen.
But the way they were meant to work, they were fine, you know. Just that people didn't maintain the connections and the battery terminals and everything. Whereas with 12 volts, you got a bit of you can lose 2 volts and it still sort of works. If you lose 2 volts on 6 volts, you haven't got much left.
But also with your 6-volt battery, the battery has to be a lot newer because...
More currenties.
That's right, and the internal resistance goes up as they age, as we well know. So really a 24-volt or 48-volt system really is the way to go for a car because it's going to be the most reliable.
Well, the 24-volt trucks and things are. It would have been a good idea.
The new cars now are 48-volt.
Yep, that's right. But 12 volts is sort of like the standard, isn't it? So I think it'll be around for a while, 13.8 volts.
Well, those Toyota Land Cruisers, now they were made in both 24 and 12 volt. I just don't know why they didn't have the 24 volt ones here. I think the military bought them as 24 volt, and I think the police did too, but everybody else got sold the 12 volt one.
You then need an inverter thing to run your 12 volt car radios.
Well, what trucks have is an inverter that steps the 24 volts down for car radios and CVs to 12 volts in the back of the dash or somewhere. In fact, you can get them quite cheaply from truck wreckers. I've heard of people doing that and modifying them to do all sorts of things.
Yeah, well, I suppose, like, I found those Land Cruisers, the batteries don't last that long because the starting, you know, with the glow plugs and the starter, it's a big load on them. And the batteries...
Still, the funny thing is the Commodore used to kill a battery in about 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
My current car, despite all that, the batteries last about 5 or 6 years.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, well, like with military would have had 24 volts. I think World War II, the Jeeps were normally 6 volts, but they did make the radio versions designed for carrying radios. They were 12 volts.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of your 62 sets and number 19s and things, they were 12 volt and 24 volt versions of them.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, well, it's interesting, isn't it? 6 volts, but I suppose in those, the battery, you know, is more complex, probably costs more money to make a 12 volt battery. And people are used to 6 volts, I suppose.
Yes. No, it's quite good. I was doing some work on the car's electrical system earlier today because I want to put an FM 92 in the Ford Laser.
Oh, that'll be good.
So I've been running wires in a fairly dodgy fashion through the firewall, and
that
going to finish off that work tomorrow.
Got in it? Has it got the EEPROM where channel 41 is channel D, or has it got the other one where it's a different number and it's full of reverse repeaters and things that's pretty useless?
I think it's the one where 41 is channel D. That's
I used to have a whole lot of spare ones of those chips, and they got misplaced, lost recently in that move from a certain place. So what we need to do is get one of those chips and get a whole lot of copies of it burned in case things happen. So that's
I've got a 92 here.
If you know anyone who can make lots of copies of a chip, it's probably a good idea, and we could all put in to do it.
Trouble is that FM 92s, when you can go and buy a Bofang for $30, it covers all frequencies and it's got everything in it and all the tone controls, all the CCTS and reverses and infinite number of steps. It's a bit pointless, really. And they weren't very sensitive, those 92s. They're about 10 dB less sensitive than a ham set.
Yes.
Well, they seem to work in most places. I mean, if you're really that fussy, you could put a preamp on it.
Yeah, could, but
But then I suppose the FM 814, 815 base stations would be about the same thing.
Yeah, they were. They weren't very good, and for ham use, particularly for mobile, it makes all the difference. Well, it's like someone running 10 times the power. It's. So I just use ham sets now. I used to use 92s and these things in the cars, but they look very, very impressive.
Well, there's a Chinese thing you can buy. It runs 28 megs, 6 metres, 2 metres and 70 centimetres. It runs 50 watts on some of the bands. It's about $180 or something by the time you get it.
Well, look, I've get Yaesu and ICOM mobile radios, 2 metre sets, 50-watt sets for about $100 at Hamfest, no problems, and they all seem to work okay.
I should get one of those to, I mean, I've had so many issues trying to get this FM92 installed.
They really are crap.
Just be
Yeah, I've
smarter.
had mine working in my Toyota Land Cruiser for 10 years now. It hasn't missed a beat.
You got your 92.
Yeah, I've got an FM 900 in there, and I've got a PRM 80. Now, the FM 92 is on, 900 is on 2 metres, and the PRM 80 is on 70. And so far, touch wood, they've worked. Well, they've worked for 10 years without missing a beat, which is good so far.
Yeah, but then you can go for $100. You buy a ham rig that's got everything programmed. You can do anything with it. Runs more power, more sensitive. It's smaller. It probably works better in other respects too, and yeah, so it's just a matter
Well,
of
this
convenience.
seems to work well enough for what I'm doing at the moment, so until I decide to do something else, as I said, the thing I just mentioned before, and you can even buy an antenna that goes with it that runs those 4 bands as well, all nicely to put in your car, and it's probably smaller than FM 900, of course. The thing about a lot of those small rigs, if you hold the button down for crossband, they get very hot.
Yeah, although Steve's and Chris was running his continuously, and they didn't seem to pop.
Well, he had one that he popped by doing that.
Did he? I think it had other problems before that. I think it was caused by something else. I think there was a dodgy rig.
I remember when I was being relayed by Chris one night. I was on UHF. I was just using using a Baofeng, and I had to keep the carrier constant, or else the squelch would go all funny. And I had that thing running for about 15-20 minutes continuously. It got so hot that I almost burnt my hand on it.
Yeah, but that's I'm not talking about handhelds.
Oh yeah, I know. But there are I had a Kenwood that did something similar. That the LCD screen would just discolour. It went back to normal. But yeah, I think with adequate cooling, I mean, it should be fine as long as they're not like insulated or anything.
That's another thing with the LCD screens. Some of them just go black after a certain time. By the time they go black, you try and get another screen for that radio.
Yeah, but that's it's probably 20 years old. There's no point getting another screen. It's just, things have their time and their place, and when they just go old or get redundantized, it's just cheaper to get something new.
Yeah, I should get one of those QYT rigs or whatever. They're like the base station of the...
It's that series of radio, and it's 4 band, 50 watts. It does 28 megs, 6 metres, 2 metres, and 70.
Are they expensive?
Yeah.
As I said, they're about $200 by the time you get them here. And
that's
you can
quite
buy
cheap.
An antenna that's a 4 band antenna
Really?
on your car.
A whole
For about
station.
30, yeah, so for about $250 you got everything to just bolt in the car.
Isn't that amazing? Nice.
Don's son has one.
Oh, right, okay, Mr. LTW or whatever.
LTL.
LTL. He
It's
could
the
be.
little VK3 little. You've got VK3 big and VK3 little.
He could be listening up there at Gordon.
Well, sometimes, because he's line of sight to here, sometimes he comes on at night. And one day I was coming back from Hawthorne, and I spoke to him all the way along the Burwood Highway, all the way up the hill, and all the way onto my driveway. I don't think he was running that much power, but because that hill's quite high, he was perfect copy all the way, except for a couple of dips where he dropped out.
I can hear him okay here. No worries.
That's right. Well, that's pretty high up.
Yeah.
And I'll just put a shout out. I think I've won you another listener, Dave.
Oh,
we
really?
have, on the stream, we have David in the vicinity of Sydney, who I know through vintage Apple computer collecting, and he's sending a few message.
I'll just go and see how many.
VK3 EGG working.
I'll just see how many people are watching on the screen.
With VK3ASE and VK3 BEK, and we say cheerio to David in Sydney. And yeah, I suppose the old Apple computers, I quite enjoyed playing with them. I hope one day if a few sheds and things can get built to do a bit more of that.
Well,
yes, it'd be good if I had a dedicated facility for it.
Amazing number now. I've got 5 people
As
watching.
I told you the other day, all the missions would have been properly done here. A certain thing hadn't happened when I moved up here.
I know you would have
Yes,
had.
that's right.
You would have had a big studio booth built. You would have a big mixing
Well, I
desk.
budgeted on that because really the pension isn't enough money to do projects without doing little bits of extra work to earn pocket money. And of course you can't get cashy jobs, so really I was depending heavily on that to do my projects. Otherwise it's just Well, it's like Anthony. I do projects and put them off and off and off until I lose interest in them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Very sad indeed.
Well, when you work out when we all lived with our parents in the 70s...
Living in the
we
70s?
used to spend more than what the dole is each week just on keeping our stations going and building our projects. So therefore, if you work out what the dole and the pension is now, you need an extra $400 a week cashy job to maintain your station.
That's right.
If you're going to fix a car on top of that and keep that going, probably $600 a week isn't much money these days. So
It's
you need
not.
to earn that cash just to keep the station and the car going, and then use your pension to pay the bills. Then you'd probably be about right.
Yes, 110 volts. Yeah, look, it's right. You know, it's just, I think everyone should be paid the maximum wage for doing nothing. Then there wouldn't be anybody upset. There'd be no poor people. There'd be no one on the street. No street people.
Yeah, I think that we should adopt that system. It would solve all of my problems, certainly.
The comment there, yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you see, when you consider less than 10% of the people lock up all the wealth on this planet.
Do they really?
If
Mr.
they
Gates and
paid
people like that.
Fair share of tax, there would be no poverty anywhere on this planet. That's how greedy some people are on this planet. And that makes me quite
They're
sick
so greedy, aren't they? Yes, they don't pay any tax and get all the benefits. Yeah. It's,
Well, unfortunately, the adversarial legal system and all our fraudulent laws that run this country are actually made to benefit the rich, not you and me.
Of course they are. Yep. They're
I found out by obeying the law 10 years ago, it is one load of fraud.
Look, the whole world is crap.
The law is one great big example of fraud. It's just total fraud. I know John Fain made some comments like that on his ABC program, and he's dead right.
Well, the whole thing is the whole world. It doesn't make any sense. Everything is crap. Everything you're told is crap. I wouldn't believe anything told.
Well, what they tell you about being honest in school, well, the people who lie the most are the ones that get ahead.
Well, look, you can still be decent and a nice person, to be pleasant to people, and I don't espouse to be lying and be a prick.
No,
but,
nor do I. I like to be able to be honest, like people taught us to do. But when I look and see what actually happens, it's the opposite to what we were taught.
Yeah, look, it's just, as long as you can, if you understand the system, I know it's all crap, and I just live my life and I ignore everything else, and I don't care what other people think. And if people have views I don't have, well, I don't care. And it's just, the whole world is just a mishmash constructed to help the people in power, to keep wealth, and all that sort of thing. And
that's right.
You know, there's nothing like, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Well, no, they're not. They're here to hinder and take your money, and that's, as long as that's the way you think about things, it's you can do okay.
Well, exactly.
Yes.
It's just a bit of a pity that some things work the way they do like that.
Well, look, there's worse places to live. All the world's like that.
I don't think I'd like to live in the Middle East.
No, North Korea might be a bit nicer.
Yeah.
Mr. Kim seems such a nice man.
If you're a cat, apparently cats are worshipped like the sacred cows in India, I heard.
Are they really?
Yes, so if you're a cat, the Middle East is where to live, as long as a bomb doesn't fall on the house where you live and kill you.
Yeah.
But if you run over a cat in some of those countries,
ooh, you're in big trouble.
You go to goal and have big troubles, just like if you kill a cow by running into them with a car in India.
Yeah, India. Look, when you look at the world, it's just crazy, absolutely crazy. It's almost like a mental asylum. The whole world is just people doing stuff. Because we've been used to it.
The cuckoo's nest.
We think it's normal. It's not normal. It's just absolute crap. It's just when society moves on in little stages, betters itself, but it's just so much rubbish, so much noise and crap going on. So yeah, it's at least you've got diversity and people don't, can do what you like to some extent. So that's the one thing. Do what you enjoy. Yeah.
Yes, it's all a series of trade-offs. I mean, I guess a lot of those, I guess our current economic system is an entropic model where everything everything will just fall to the most efficient sort of distribution of money, whether it's fair or not. Unfortunately, it's just it's almost like a physical law.
Yeah, well, that's right. In fact, originally when they came up with the socialist and communist systems, they were meant to be fair to everyone, except what they found was the people at the upper echelons of the government and everything didn't actually play the communist system at all. They played a sort of a funny pseudo-capitalist system, and they had all this immense wealth while everybody else was shit poor. Okay, it guaranteed everyone a job, but they didn't get much money.
Oh yes, that's right. It only takes a little bit of. I mean, you might have a perfect model system where everybody has an equal distribution of everything, but all it takes is a few people taking a little bit more, and the system will just become completely unbalanced. And well, that's why none of them have really worked in a way that.
No, they haven't worked very well.
Yeah,
they've apparently that happened in Russia. Okay, then when Russia went capitalist, there were all these people unemployed who couldn't get a job, so they wanted the old system back. But of course, when the old system was actually running, it had all those problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody's figured out how to do an implementation of those governmental systems that actually works for a long period of time. I mean, that's a big trade-off with those. You get systematic corruption, and how do you make sure that doesn't happen? Well, you need a watchdog, and how do you make sure the watchdog doesn't get corrupted? Well, you need a watchdog for the watchdog, and now you have 5 layers of bureaucracy.
Yeah, because when you give anyone power, as they found out when Christine Nixon sacked the drug squad and put another one in, that was going to get rid of all the police who joined the police force to make their millions reselling all the drugs and having mansion houses and Rolls Royces. The only thing is now I think you find that the new ones that Christine Nixon put in have probably been in there long enough that they're doing the same thing.
Exactly, that happens. And Christine Nixon was such an outstanding police commissioner. Getting her hair done while the state was burning. She was so good.
Right. There was a big hoo-ha. She's having her hair done and doing something else when the country was all burning.
She was having lunch, and they asked her, "Why were you out having lunch?" "I had to eat." And I thought, well, in the emergency services centre, there's a big cafeteria, runs 24 hours a day. She could have sat there looking after the troops. And
waiting until there was a gap in the emergency to grab a sandwich and probably hold the sandwich with one hand and a microphone or a telephone, whatever she had to use with the other hand to coordinate the emergency. I mean, and of course, that's why everybody spewed, because she didn't do that.
Most people who would have been in that situation would have thought, this is a bit like Churchill, the state's in crisis, this is my turn to be the big leader and look at, history books will be written that I did this. I was spent 24 hours in the control room helping and answering questions to the fire brigades and the police and organising everything. Didn't have any sleep, but no, I went to get my hair done and had a little meal afterwards at the hotel or the restaurant. So I had people in charge in the control room. They can ring me up on the phone if they've got an important thing about what country town's totally burnt down and 10 million people are killed. They can work that out. I'll just enjoy myself. Hope Christine isn't listening. But anyway, that's what I think, and I think that's what a lot of other people think too.
That's why it kicked up such a stink, isn't it?
Yes. It's just like totally not the sort of people that should be in charge of that type of thing.
Yes, but when you look at any of
eat a lot. You needed to eat a lot. That's exactly right.
When you look at any of those politicians and people up the top, they're only there to feather their nest. Also, a long-term plan that might do the country good is unthinkable because they have 3 years to do it in. So they do short-term things that aren't necessarily all that good. Mainly they work to feather their nest, and they don't care what happens after 3 years. That's how they run everything.
Yep. Yeah.
And they're as corrupt as anything on top of that.
Oh, the world is just a corrupt place.
Yes. There's a big problem with getting into politics. I'm sure that you get lots of idealistic young people who want to get in there and solve all the problems, and they can see ways of solving all the problems. As soon as you get into that system, though, you find that, okay, well, maybe it doesn't work.
So how long do you have to join Young Libs or Young Labour before you actually get something where you get paid?
Oh, well, I don't know, but you go into the system, and it's kind of like what happened to Peter Garrett, I think, and by the time you end up having to compromise and then compromise more.
Peter Garrett in Midnight Oil in 3CR.
Yes, that's right. Beds are burning.
Yes, well, you set
He
out
was
to do
so-
100% of the
he was-
things that you want to
He was such a good politician, wasn't he?
And
Did
he
so many
banned
things.
light globes because he said they weren't very green. Well, the only thing is now they've banned light globes. They've got rid of the 600 ohm telephone, but as much as they can, they're replacing it with the NBN boxes. Now, each NBN box draws about 20 watts instead of milliwatts, so you multiply that by the population of Australia, and you need several Loyang power stations just to run all the
NBN.
modem boxes or N21 boxes or whatever they're called, just sitting there on standby 24 hours a day, sometimes doing something, most of the time doing nothing when people aren't on their computers. And of course, if it's not left on, your phone won't work and nothing will work. So it's actually a flawed system because it doesn't supply its own power to run. So if the power fails, you lose your telephone and everything all in one go. And it would just be someone's luck that when someone had a heart attack and there was 5 minutes to ring up, the phone wouldn't work on the NBN. So you pick up the mobile phone, oh, sorry, it's out of credit. And then by the time you stuff around with all that, well, this happened with John Wickham, except it was a telephone box of a lady who wouldn't get off the phone, and by the time he got to use the phone, Daryl had died. But the same scenario could happen with the NBN and the mobile phone network because of how unreliable it is.
But you can ring 000 without credit on a phone.
If the mobile phone doesn't have some other funny fault that they also develop.
Well, I mean, how many situations do you have to guard against?
Well, the other thing is if you lose the power to a suburb for more than
I agree.
4 or 5 hours,
The coverage just
then
goes off.
mobile phone towers go flat as well.
That's particularly bad,
So
and it's happened
if
here.
If you were asleep all day and you woke up and then there was an emergency, you didn't know everything had been off for 6 hours, then you pick up your mobile phone and of course it's all gone flat and nothing works. So perhaps they need to start teaching ham radio in school or something so people have that as a backup.
No, you just have phones for 10 different phones with 10 different carriers, and have a sat phone as well. Yeah.
Well, I guess a sat phone would work, but don't they cost megabucks per millisecond to run?
I think they do. Now, we'll have a listen on 80, 3.65 megahertz. I'm looking at the screen now. And if you want to come up and have a talk to us via 80, you can come on 3665. And I'll see when the waveform comes up and we can cross over. But I don't think anyone's going to do it because no one's on 80 anymore. Apparently, no one listens to 80. Just static. At least Mr. Kim's quiet tonight. There's no radar, which is pretty good.
Yeah, when I was listening, I think it was last week or whenever it was, the radar was quite loud.
Really, yes. Yeah. Well, Mr. Kim seems to have gone off now. But it's interesting. The old NBN, look, the NBN's that's a total fraud too. What a waste of. That's the biggest one.
Well,
One of the
apparently
biggest
now
waste
they're
of
saying
money.
that 5G will overtake it, and then it'll end up being a redundant system.
I think it could very well. They'll still need a good network to link up the towers and everything. You still need a backbone, but it's that's why they're trying. Breaking their back trying to connect it to every house before 5G comes in, before it becomes useless. Although I'm looking, if you get 100 megs up, down and 50 up, it's not bad. I don't know if 5G would do that economically as a wide service would do.
Well, because it's much more line of sight, you'd have to have a lot more towers, because I think it's on about 5 gigs as well.
Yeah, it is. It's not as high as some of them are, but yeah. Anyway, we'll see what happens. The world's still turning, I think. But 160 will keep going for a while, I think.
Yes, we can rely on
Apparently
160.
with the 4G we're meant to have now, apparently in most cases you're actually using 3G without knowing it.
4G works fairly well. It's not radar from Kim on 80, it's actually DRM emissions. It could be a DRM, yes. Now, apparently, Mr. Kim is actually... I read that too about the DRM. On 3635 something or other, Mr. Kim's running DRM, and on the 80 metre band. I wonder if he's running tonight. We'll have a look.
Have you got a thing that decodes DRM?
I have, but I haven't got it connected at the moment.
I remember I was going to make one of those things you put on the computer with a sound card, but in all my moving, I don't know what I did.
Oh, right, yeah. But Mr. Kim has big shortwave stations running, a megawatt super overmodulated, which is a very good thing.
Yes, and then there's some shortwave radios you can get now that have DRM already built in.
But no one's running DRM except, I think, Radio New Zealand and Mr. Kim.
And also Radio New Zealand comes in bash on just above 40 metres anyway.
I know. Yeah, if
And that's good old AM.
yeah, look, I've listened to on compared with if the signal's really good on AM, it sounds a bit better on DRM. It's got more tings. It sounds more like FM. If the signal is a bit iffy on AM, the DRM doesn't work at all. So
Perhaps that's why it hasn't taken off.
it's actually crap. It's like it needs a really good signal to get a. And if you get any interfering, like Mr. Kim in the background, or Morse code, or teletype, it just
then it
totally breaks up.
the digital train out of sync, and the thing doesn't know what to sync up with to decode. It just goes for a wreck.
That's right. It is. Look, this is the thing about technology. If technologies have been around for about 25 years, which DRM and DAB have been, and they haven't taken off, they're never going to take off. I mean, think of all the technologies that have happened in that time since DRM and DAB have been around, that have come and gone, and they're just still sitting there, no take-up hardly, and the old AM is still going.
They still bother to run them.
Yep. It's... I think probably DAB will be disbanded before FM is.
FM's better quality.
Yeah. And it's, but then the governments like to control stuff, and they can control DAB, because it's not, you lose control of your transmitter, and, you're not going to put out missions that might be politically incorrect.
That is actually the thing with digital, because I think in many cases the government owns the one transmitter does the mux of all the stations. If someone's on there they don't like, they can just turn it off.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's...
And because our democracy is going the way it's going, we could end up like China one day anyway, so that would be really good for governments.
Well, look, all this, did we discuss this last night last week in the booth, I think we did, didn't we? Similar things.
Oh, I think so.
Didn't we? I can't remember what we discussed.
I don't remember. We had fragments of political discussion.
We had a few, but we kept it non-political. We did that quite reasonably. But
you mustn't have politics. It's just so bad.
Well, you can have it, but you can control it. Otherwise, people get carried away. But in a general form, like I think that total control China's got with cameras, facial recognition, like you've got no privacy at all. I think it's a very dangerous thing. If we're going down the technological path, there has to be really hard rules against our privacies being invaded in that way. And, we don't have privacy really in many respects, but...
well, no, we don't. And actually, I think with all the digital things, it's probably getting worse and worse and worse.
But people like to trade off the convenience of the digital thing to have privacy. But it's different, because if you log into Google or something and your stuff is, you hit the thing and lets you know where you are and your details and stuff, that's different to actual cameras spying on you when you're walking around, driving around, having a government inventory of where you've gone.
That as well. There's cameras everywhere now. Yeah. Even in Upwey, there's those funny street lights that are black, hanging off poles, particularly around where the council offices are, because the council knows everybody hates them, so they've got really big security, but it's everywhere else anyway.
I know. Look, it's just like Mr. What was it, 1984, really?
1984. That's George Orwell. What?
George Orwell with the tally screen. And blabbing patriotic music at you all the time, and I seeing exactly what you're doing.
Yes, it's a bit scary to think that that's all actually sort of happening
and
now.
People are doing it voluntarily, putting them in their rooms.
That's right. There's a great joke where something on Facebook now, where in the 60s people were paranoid about people wiretapping their homes, and now you just yell at your Google thing, "Hey, wiretap! Can you order me a pizza?" That's
it is pretty amazing, isn't it? And that they could just Google it. Do no evil could be just listening on 10 million conversations of everyone in their room, finding out what they're talking about. It's
yeah, they all certainly are, I think.
Where's it all going to end? But they said this 100 years ago. Where's it all going to end?
Yes.
steam trains going 100 miles an hour. The body can't go. You can't go more than 100 miles an hour, and you can't do this, can't do that.
That's right. When they had trains that went over 30 miles an hour, there were people saying, but everybody will be dead when the train gets to the other end because they're going faster than the human body can stand.
We weren't meant to go that fast.
That's right. Well, what about people travelling the speeds they do now, 40,000 miles an hour and faster in spacecraft?
That's right.
I would like to leave Google and all those sort of shared
It would be good.
networks and build up my own more as it's more based on principle than anything else. I realise that all of my bills and all of my personal information, all of my medical information goes through my Gmail account. And it's a bit disturbing that Google has all of that, but as a long-term project of mine is just to build up my own mail server and all that, and build my own social media server, and that'd be quite good.
Be in control.
Yeah, there was
Do no evil.
Current Affair, I think it was, or was it 7:30 report? One of those programs about how Google had all this stuff on people.
It could be, that Google should change their thing from not do no evil, but do evil, because that's what they do now.
That's basically it. They had to remove. They had to remove "Don't be evil" from their statement or whatever, because some of the stuff that they were doing probably could be construed as evil.
Yeah.
I reckon what Google's ultimate aim is sort of getting into weird territory here, but I reckon once they've collected enough data from a person over a lifetime, I'm talking many terabytes of personal information, conversations, they will be able to develop technology where you can accurately simulate that person.
Yes.
And you can have a conversation with a person who's deceased just by what a machine learns from their life online. And I think Google's actually working towards making some kind of immortality program where it'll just be a bunch of dead people talking to each other on Facebook.
It could very well be.
Surprise me if it moves into that angle.
People's Facebook could just keep going when they tuttle, and you wouldn't know. It could just.
That's right.
If they've had enough conversation hours with what's his name, they could just keep on work out algorithm of what the people think about things and what answers are going to be. Because really, when you think of conversation, if you meet new people, on the first, think this is a really interesting person, and all the other people I've known for years are so boring, you know what they're going to say, and you talk to this person and think, this is great. And then after a few days you realise they're just the same as anybody else. They've got their own pet peeves, their own things they're interested in and things they're not, and they're really just a hollow shell talking in an echo chamber, and they're just the same as everyone else.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's what I've found. So you might as well go back to the normal boring people, because everyone gets that in the same way. This is why a lot of people get sick. They have to change their wife every year because they get sick of them. You're going to get sick of anybody anyhow if you're with them all the time.
It's hard to find a new wife every year to change.
Well, some people do, don't they?
Well, some people have a new whale every week, and then they go and get some of all the nasty illnesses that go with that.
Yes, I know. Yes, some people like to do that. But they're never happy. Some people are never happy. You've got to accept the good and the bad.
Yeah, you've got to accept that everything's a sort of compromise. You can never, if you strive for perfect, you can never really get to it.
Well, no, and human beings can't be perfect anyway.
Oh yeah, that's right. So it's a bit of a fruitless search. I mean, well, I guess you can try and hope that you'll fall in love with the perfect person or whatever, but I don't think that person exists.
It doesn't.
It's just an image, and it's an image in your head that's constantly shifting.
Everyone you get will have their disadvantages. I don't think there would be I don't think it'd be anyone where you'd like every feature of them.
Well, look, the thing is, you need someone different to yourself, and people who get divorced every year. Basically, they've got no tolerance for somebody else's point of view, or they're very locked in on what they like, and they don't like anyone else having a different idea of things or different interests or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
So, yeah. And they can't see that they change again. In another year, they're going to be in the same situation.
Well, that's right. Even if you do find someone who's perfect for you at a particular point in time, it's no guarantee that your opinions will still say the same. What you are compatible with will be the same in a period of time. So I think that you really just got to focus on what makes you happy, and can you help make someone else happy as well, and that's about it, really.
Yeah,
That's probably about right too.
There's a spread of people that you would be compatible with, some you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And as long as they're in that spread of compatibility, you're probably okay.
Yes.
And I think tolerance is important. You've got to be tolerant of people.
Well, that's right, because there's probably no two people that can agree with everything point by point. In fact, it might be boring if they did. I mean, everyone's going to have their differences, and
well, there's nothing to talk about if you agreed with every point.
That's right.
You're just talking to a mirror.
Basically, yes.
So if you just no one ever criticises what views or points you're making, you're never going to be changing your point of view, or maybe get a new insight into things.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so anyway, it's people had to wait for a couple of hours for the big philosophical contact. It was pretty good.
Well, yes,
first hour or two.
2 o'clock in the morning.
Nearly 2 o'clock. Now, are you going to the dinner, Mr. Egg?
Yeah, I certainly am, yes.
Yeah, good.
Of course I am.
So Anthony and all the others are
I
going?
presume Anthony's going, but I haven't been able to contact him on his useless telephone for ages.
Really, yeah.
And he doesn't seem to answer his emails. I mean, that was one... I told him, if he moves to a place like Arawata, because I tried living in Minyip,
Yeah,
you
Minyip.
just end up cut off from everyone.
Yep.
And his answer to that was, well, I can hear the people on UHF CV on the Westgate Bridge talking, no problems when I drive along near where the property is, therefore 2 metres will absolutely boom in. Well, it doesn't.
Well, it should boom in. I can sort of hear him here. If you had
Well,
to
he's got a valley, so in some directions it does go in well, but I'm just off the valley to one side. There's actually a hill directly in my path here, and also if you go to Anthony's, you point the antenna upway, you're actually trying to transmit through the ground of a hill to the right-hand side as you face his backyard, so it's got a problem at both ends.
If he put a decent antenna up, he would have no problems.
Well, he's had several Nelly towers.
Yeah, but they've all fallen down, they've all been put up badly and stuff.
Well, he hasn't even put them up.
Yeah.
He's put up temporary towers made of water pipes and things.
And they bent over when people drive into
said,
them.
look, you need to concrete the basin, you need to have proper guy anchors, and he doesn't do it, he just has all hammered in with tomato stakes or whatever.
Tomato
Just the wind comes along, it all comes down.
Look, if he did put up a decent VHF, UHF antenna pointing towards Melbourne, he would have really good coverage. There's no doubt about that. Of course,
Probably needs to be about 50 feet up or more.
When he has had those antennas up before they've blown down, I've had no trouble talking to him here.
Well, you
Simplex.
wouldn't, because you're in the centre of the valley, but he's always noisy here no matter what.
Really?
That's right. But if I drive along my street, if I go to the western end of my street where the water tower is, he's fully bashed.
Fully bashed,
When I
is
drive
he?
to my end, he dips out because he's in the shadow of this hill that you can see from the road that's directly in the path.
Yeah. It's a bit sad, really. Too many hills.
It is, yes.
Well, look, I think, isn't he thinking of maybe moving into town, Currumbara or something, so he's not so far away from things?
Oh, he's talked about various things. And,
Because living out there
and the other thing, of course, I suppose,
It's a lot of
living
travel.
in a house by yourself on the pension
Isn't much
that's
fun.
not very affordable either.
particularly when you're out in the middle of the nowhere, he just can't walk to the shops or something. It's got to hop in the car and drive half an hour. It is that sort of country living. It's great if you, for some people, but it's not.
Well, if you lived as a group of people who got on together,
Yeah.
and you had you'd bought a group of properties or a co-owned property or something, that might be all right. But living by yourself, so you got to do everything yourself, and
I
you've
know,
only got
yeah.
the pension to live on. And as I said before, the the old cashy jobs you could get in factories or whatever, say my name's Mickey Mouse, and they'd put you on, pay you cash. You just can't get those jobs anymore.
You can't get, and they're going to ban cash totally. This is another thing. I don't like that.
Oh, that's right.
I like cash.
So do I.
I like
What's going
cash
to happen
too.
to church fetes and hamfests and all the rest if they ban cash? I suppose people just barter.
I guess they barter. And look, I like it. They tell the tradesman, I'll pay you cash, and you get, I don't know why, but it's always cheap when you pay cash. I think it's a really good thing. And
I think it is too.
I wouldn't like to see that the cashless society happen, because then every transaction is on card and
That's
computer.
right. Everything
On the
can
government can see what you've bought,
That's
when you've
right.
bought it,
and then they
pay tax on
And
it.
then what they can do, if you're on, say, welfare, they can ban more and more hobbies and things.
Oh, no.
And they can put digital stops on there, so if you try and buy something that they've deemed you shouldn't buy,
Yeah,
it just won't go through and you won't be able to buy it.
exactly. Like they say, you can't buy booze, you can't buy transistors, you can't buy
That's right. Now, this
modulator.
is the funny thing. They say people shouldn't buy alcohol and cigarettes and gambling. Well, if you're on welfare and you buy those things, you're giving the money directly back to the government.
You are, that's right.
And if you
Yes.
buy illegal headphones, well, you're giving the money to the police, which actually goes back to the government as well.
Can you imagine if they ban cash at the Hamfest? Everyone, like Anthony, would have to have a little one of those little card reader things, and you flash your card on
That's
it.
right. And also, then with the robo-debt thing, where you earn some money for one afternoon, and then it says, righto, you earn that much per afternoon, therefore it multiplies it to twice that much per day times 365, and before you know where you are, you're done for welfare fraud,
Oh.
because that's what's happened to people. Because the computer has suddenly decided they were actually earning that much, a whole day's wage, and they were getting welfare as well, when in actual fact they went and did one afternoon job for $50 or $100 or something, and they didn't do anything like that. And then they've gone after them with federal police and all the rest. It's been on the current affair to bully them over this robo-debt. It just means it won't be worthwhile for people to sell things at Handfest if they're going to have to go through all
Well,
that.
can you imagine? You say, "Oh, how much is this this resistor? 2 cents. Okay, get your card out, pay for 2 cents. It's going to cost you more than 2 cents in card fees to buy the thing."
That's right.
And then the person has got to rent the card reader that's connected to the internet with the paper coming out and the
So
receipt
what
and
he'll
everything.
do, he'll say there's
It's
a
ridiculous.
$1 surcharge, like some of the,
Yeah.
particularly the Chinese $2 shops. You go and buy something for $2 in there, and they go, but there's a $5 surcharge on your card.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So you've got to buy more than $10 worth of stuff, or they really charge you. And even when you buy more than $10 worth of stuff, there's still a $2 surcharge on the card.
I just think it's despicable. I like cash. It's another thing. The government wants control of everyone. Cashless society. It's just going
Well,
to
it's
be
just more Big Brother stuff,
Oh,
like
but
1984. only worse.
1984.
Yes.
Room 57 or whatever it was.
Oh, the big first step in moving to this cashless society was that ban that they were imposing on 10,000 cash transactions over $10,000 to stop the black economy.
For that. No, I don't know how that went.
Well, apparently they've put it because there was a lot of public outcry and a lot of people wrote to their members. They've had to put it into review. So that's one good
well,
thing.
the whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense anyway, because how are you going to necessarily know one occurred if it's an underhanded cash transaction that's going to happen anyway? I don't think that they're going to be too concerned about.
Well, it
I mean,
happens
if they
now.
get caught,
The
they'll
plumber
have
says,
another thing.
You
whacked
pay the
on it.
plumber. You say, how much is this? He says $50. You pay him $50. Obviously, there's nothing written down. He's doing it. He's not paying GST. You're not. Everyone's happy. How do they know? Unless there's a spy in the room or something, and it's going to happen. But that's why they've made the penalties are very high, because if they do catch someone, they're going to make an example of them and put them in gaol for 2 years.
What, working for cash?
Yeah, if you buy something for $110,000, you're going to go to gaol. So yeah.
If you pay cash for anything, it's you get into big trouble if it's more than 10 grand, because they think you're up to no good.
Now, apparently, the
There
law.
were Chinese coming to Australia
Yeah, they've
with
got
a couple of $1 million in a suitcase and buying houses.
exactly. Yes. Yep. They do that. Buy a house for cash. I mean, what's wrong with cash? I think it's great. Of course, the young people don't have cash anymore. They're just all everything's done on the card, which I use card too. But I do like cash, mainly because you can spend and buy stuff, and it's not you can buy silly.
You want to buy 2 Sherbies for a cent. Well, I think it's 2 Sherbies for 20 cents now. To get your card out to buy 2 Sherbies. Or a little can of drink or something. I mean, that's stupid.
Or go to Hamfest, buy stupid stuff, and it's not. No one knows you've bought it because it's not on your credit card, and you haven't wasted all the silly money. I want to give my money, and you get silly paper. I think that would be a good song to close down with when we close down.
Now, who did that song?
The Beatles.
Oh, I know the song. Yes, I know the song. Yes, it's quite a classic.
Yeah. What's it called again? You'd know, Andrew, wouldn't you?
No, I don't.
I even have the album with it on, and I just can't recall it at the moment.
Funny paper. Now, what album was it off? Surely our correspondent's going to send us that. He knows all about this. You want this, my money.
Is You Never Give Me Your Money?
Yes.
From, I think, Abbey Road.
Abbey Road, okay. We'll have a look at this.
You Never Give Me Your Money.
I think you're right, too. Yes, I know the song.
And I didn't know that. I just Googled it.
Probably full album. So we'll see if it's got, when you go to the full album, sometimes they have all songs.
Where it goes with the slumber and all that.
Yeah. So let's see if he's got the songs marked. They haven't. I want one that's got all the songs marked. Oh look, I've got 5 notifications on YouTube. Let's see what they are. The Uncut Beatles press conference is actually becoming one of my major point scorers on YouTube. The Uncut Beatles press conference. Yeah. Anyway, well, I might have that song because it's. I was going to have some more vintage Japanese stuff, but we might have that song because it's vaguely topical, I suppose.
Relevant to the discussion.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Here we are. This is the song we need, I think. This might be the one. Yes.
Yeah, that's the song.
Trouble is, all these clips, most of them are the new remastered versions. I don't want the remastered versions. I want the original mono versions because they're much better. And they're meant to be listened to in mono. Yeah. Well,
that's the thing. John Lennon on his interview said he only ever thought of things being done in mono.
Yeah.
In fact, they used to record everything in Abbey Road Studios on BTR2 full-track tape recorders originally, in mono.
Well, apparently Peppers, they spent 3 weeks mixing it down in mono, and then they were told they wanted a stereo version, and they did it in 2 days, just quick crap mix, and he said the mono mix was far better. What's his name?
They probably put more time into making it sound good.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. George Martin said the stereo mix was crap, basically. It was just left and right, just for effect. But all their time and effort and creative ability went into the mono mix. And there's nothing wrong with mono. I like mono. I think people are too used to stereo these days, but mono, if it's mixed for mono, it's really great.
And then you get some of the old black and white films and they colorise them, and actually they're better to watch in black and white.
They are, if they're artistically shot in black and white, and all the lighting and the
well, that was the thing. They did their grayscale, their lighting, everything for a black and white feature, and somebody's gone and colorised it, and it actually wrecks a lot of that.
It does. Now, say documentary footage, if it's colorised, now old documentary footage, it's colorised, like if it's shot in colour, the colour's faded, who knows what the colours are. So really, it's not, if you colorise, say, old footage, and do it. You know, if you get say World War One, you get a good representation of what were the colours of the uniform, to get some colour photos or some way to make a reference. The sky's blue, uniforms this colour, the trucks were painted this sort of colour. Then you can reference stuff, put it in the program, and have it a reasonable good colour coming out. Now, if it was shot in colour, it's all going to be faded and all over the place anyhow. So
Yeah, that's right.
who says what? You know, if the sky's reasonably blue, if it's pink, you're going to say it's wrong. But if it could be any shade of blue, you think that's
Even
okay.
though some films get that bad.
Yeah, it's just that colour balance is an aesthetic thing, but if something is shot for black and white aesthetics, I think it should be kept that way. The classic movies just look fantastic. The shafts of light, it's just amazing. Like imagine Citizen Kane in colour; it just wouldn't have the same appeal.
That's an exact example of what I was saying.
Yeah.
Now they have got some films like that and colorised them, and they just don't look as good.
Oh no, it's terrible. Yes. Oh well. Yeah, so anyway, look at the time. We've got I hope no one's listening and complaining about this, because we're splattering all over the band.
Yes, we're wiping out 80 metres for our poor friends in wherever they are.
Yeah, in North Korea, their radar isn't clear. They're not a clear spot for their radar.
Blotting out their radar.
Yes. Yes, it's a blot on the amateur radio community of Australia.
Sewing machine. Yes.
The sewing machine, yes. Doing a rev. Yes, well, it's been quite good, and hopefully we can do it again. Oh, not next week as well. But anyway, we can see what we can do.
Oh, yes, we'll find a mission sometimes. Oh,
Yes.
just very quickly,
Yes.
I just wanted to mention I did test out the 6 metre set that you gave me.
Oh,
and it
yes.
does work. It fired up quite nicely.
Good.
So what sort of radio was that?
It was an old Philips FM something or other, but I just had to figure out the wiring, and it does seem to work. So I'm going to put up an antenna tomorrow and try and do some business with that.
What frequency does it go on?
Oh, I think it's only got one crystal in it. I think it's 52525.
Yeah, that was a common one.
Is that still used?
I think that's the FM simplex liaison frequency. So I'm sure some people
But
still
when
use
I've
it.
left things on there, it never says anything.
All right.
Yeah, oh, that's good. So it's got a nice Philips. Is it Philips, that set?
It is. It's a Philips car phony thing.
Yeah, they were very big. All the cars used to have them ones. And, yeah.
This would be one of the newer solid state ones, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it's all solid state.
It's solid state, but it predates. I think that predates the FM 828.
Oh, it's ancient. It's ancient.
Not
Yeah.
like a 1650 or one of those sorts of numbers.
I think it is something
Yes, I
like
had some
that.
of those kicking around with the idea of converting them, but before I got around to doing it, other radios turned up, so they just end up just sitting there.
They're particularly deaf, unless it's got a preamp in it. But anyway, something to play around with.
Well, some
Yes, that's right. Well, that's something I'll have to get up early tomorrow for, so I'll go do that.
So what are those other leads for audio in and out or something, was it?
Well, two of them are for audio output, and there's a third one which is a socket, and I can't. It won't. It's not an audio input. Part of the circuitry's been replaced with this little custom board, and I don't know what it's for. It's It's just like an IC and a few caps and things. But yeah, I thought it was an audio input, but it doesn't. I tried putting a sine wave into it and it didn't.
Nothing came out.
Yeah, no.
Oh, unless it's a squelch or some tone squelch or something or anything.
Well, the audio from the hand mic was quite good.
Oh, good, excellent.
So it sounds very acceptable.
So you've got two 6 metre rigs, have you now?
Yes, that's right. One's a later synthesised one, and this one, which will be quite fun to work. And this one's perfect for driving an amplifier as well.
Oh, good.
Because it's only 10 watts out, I think.
And you can put it in your car and drive around with it.
I could do have 6 metres in the car and have a massive antenna hanging off the top of the thing.
That's the other thing I've noticed.
Quite
They had a
funny.
number of 6 metre repeaters up, but none of them are on the air at the moment.
Aren't they?
No, they all seem to have died.
Oh, I managed to. VK3RDD seems to be on. It was on
Where's
with
that one? I've forgotten.
Cranbourne.
Ah, yes.
Crimeborn.
Yeah, of course, yes. A lot of 6 metres in mobile radio, well, they weren't 6 or 70, 80 megs, but you'd see, cars and trucks with the massive, those big wire antennas poking off a spring on the roof, running on the low band.
Mm.
And I suppose that's converted from those low band frequencies to 6 metres.
Well, that's generally what you do. The 70 to 85 meg radio, and you increase the number of turns in a few of the coils and put more C here and there, and
That's right.
generally modify it like that. Some people just put lots of capacitance across the coils, but if you do that, the LC ratio
I
ends
know.
up wrong, and then they don't work very well at all. And that was half the problem with half the valve car phones and things people modded. They didn't have enough drive because they hadn't actually
Done it properly.
the correct LC ratio for it to be able to work.
It's very important to keep that LC ratio. I've noticed that. It's very important.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, I suppose, unless there's any other words of wisdom people want to talk about, we can go off and
This has been VK3
do it all in-
EGG and crossband duplex with VK3 BEK and VK3 ASE. We hope you've had a very pleasant evening listening to the build.
yeah,
We say morning.
yeah.
Yes, we say morning. Thanks for the chat, Dave and John. It was very good to talk. This is VK3BEK about to close down in crossband contact with VK3ASE and I'm getting my voice back, and VK3EGG.
Okay.